Ayin Beis, Volume 1, page Kuf Chav Zayin 127, chapter 68. The beginning of Discourse number 18, and also the beginning of a new year. Tafresh Ayin Beis ends here, and starts Tafresh Ayin Gimel. This is the Maimer said, the second night of Rosh Hashanah, Tafresh Ayin Gimel. Discourse 18. It's called Zeh Hayom Tchilas Masecha. So it continues a flow of where we're up to, but as you'll see, is a distinction of how he summarizes the past. Here he's just going to ask the questions in the opening of this, and the whole next chapter is a summary of all the chapters beforehand. Whereas in other discourses, after the questions, he begins a summary, and then continues on the next chapter. Here, the actual chapter 68 is a summary of a whole bunch of Maimarim till here. All the
And it goes back to the old way.
Yeah. And even here, it just brings it back. My assumption, the reason he just does that, because it's Rosh Hashanah, it's a new year, and it's like, new chayes. He's like saying, okay.
We'll look at it without new chayes.
The expression usually is after he says, we'll understand these questions on the verse by first prefacing what we learned earlier. He doesn't say that here. Here he's going to say the conclusion of everything we've learned till now is so and so, and then he just continues. It doesn't change Avon. I'm just pointing out stylistically. But with that being said, let me just sum up where we are. After the long discussion of Pnimi, which is really how divine energy manifests and energizes existence, what we know as Mamala Kalam or internalized energy, the Rabbi Rashav in chapter 46 began to move over to transcendent energy, Makiv, which is Keser. So God's desire for the world is outside of the immanent energy of existence, but it is what vivifies it and brings it into being. And went a long explanation explaining the difference between the transcendent and the immanent. Primarily two main examples were given. One is the difference in Ratzon and Keiches, desire and faculties. And there were several chapters after chapter 46, and from there on he went on to that, like 48, 49, so on. To be precise, from 49 and on he explains that difference, Ratzon and faculties. Desire and faculties were one. I mean, many differences, but essentially that one is it's an equalizer. It doesn't require exertion, and it's not impacted. It rules instead of influences or inspires. Faculties are a relationship. And then he moved on a higher level, the difference in and Shefa, the difference in energy and flow. Where also there's differences where is substanceless, it's completely just reflecting the source, as Ratzon reflects the source, which is the expression of the soul, and that doesn't require effort on the part of the transmitter, and doesn't impact the transmitter. Again, they'll break down in more details. And this also is an example of Makif and Pnimi. What I just said now, those are in the chapters 53 through basically 58, 57. After establishing that, so basically 46 to 57 gives us a clear understanding of the difference between transcendent energy and immanent energy. Then he moves on and starts explaining the effect of the transcendent energy on us. Because now the other way around. On one hand, yes, it's removed and has no relationship. All it is reflecting the source. But that doesn't mean it doesn't affect something in existence. So it's not a relationship with existence, but it's introducing into existence elements that the Mer Pnimi does not reveal. And that essentially begins in chapter 58. The impact of transcendence on existence. I think I titled it, in the videos of the classes, I titled The Existential Impact of Transcendence. which is a critical component, obviously, in the whole interface and the whole relationship with God. Because now we're not talking about relating to the energy that speaks to us and communicates with us, like our air and a keli. You're talking about the relationship with the so-called more unconscious forces that bring us into being, but they're not on our terms. The question is, what impact do they have on existence? So clearly, as we speak many times here, something outside of the system is going to have an impact that's different than what's within the system. What impact does transcendence have? So there he goes, slowly spells it out. First he begins by explaining there's the difference between Makif Kloli of Tehiri law, which is before the Tzimtzum, the Makif Kloli after the Tzimtzum of Tehiri Tata, which is Ak, Adam Kat. Then the Makifim Pratim that come within structure of existence itself, within the cosmic order, Makif of Atzilus, Makif of Bria. That's the impact of Ak begins with the general bittul that exists in a concealed way in existence, which means the existence has the capacity to have bittul. That cannot come from Er Mamala. Now let me qualify. Later we're going to discuss this. Obviously, because the divine gives life to existence, so it's receptive also to Seviv Kalaman. But for it to have truly a bittul beyond the Kol Chayma Mishtachva Lefanecha, that everything that's upright should bow before you, has to come from a place that's higher than the thing that gives you life. And that's a Seviv Kalaman impact, meaning coming from Ak. That only place that's revealed, Yesh Leimer, he says, and now I'm talking about, just to give you again the sense of chapters, 60. The effect is the life force, that we're receptive to receive life. Even a stone. Okay. Chapter 61, he starts speaking the impact of Ak on Neshamas. And he calls this Kala, what they call the Kala. That everyone has, the Nitzvah has the ability to unite and cleave to the one God. He calls it hidden, he calls it love. Just the different Amunah Pshuta, the capacity, even simple people, the capacity, even a Kal Shabakalam, even a simple person, or Kal Shabakalam means someone that's completely lax with Judaism, has the ability of Mesiras Nefesh. And then he goes on to the idea of the bittul to the Baal HaRatzon. So that's impact of Ak. Then he moves to the impact of Tehiri law. And that briefly is that the body should be receptive. The Kalim should be receptive to godliness, which is expressed in the Akedah, in that type of giving of a life. It's expressed in a carbon. We bring also chelev and dam, which is the flesh, the fat and the blood, which is the pleasure and the passion. And it's expressed in the bittul haguf, in fasting, and Yom Kippur, and so on. Then he moves on. Now what about the makifim pratim? The kesher of Atzilus. What impact does that have? So first he goes from chapter 63, giving like an overview here, 64 and 65. He explains the reason, the need. And before we get to the bittul of kesher, we have to understand its purpose. What's lacking when you only have the general desire of Ak, of the picture? So he gives all the explanations for that, because in Ak it's still all united, the energy is equal, there's no distinct entities, and then of course the two types of desire. The desire that's still a type of power of desire, you can say it's a heskem, determination, but it's not yet a passionate, active, driving force. And then there's the desire that is, which is Atzilus. After these introductions, so to speak, or after this explanation of the difference of the Makif, then he moves back to chapter 66. 66 and then 67, where last chapter we've learned the impact of Atzilus. The impact of Atzilus, of Makif of Atzilus, Kesher Atzilus. Now he's already talking in a more revealed way. So we know clearly it's still a Makif Dika impact. It's still an impact of transcendence. But now we're talking about a transcendence that has far more visible consequences, implications, I should say. And here he speaks about the words like Ava Musuteres, the hidden love, Ru'usa Deliba, the desire in the heart. How the Neshamas Yisrael are Edis. They're Edis, they're a witness, they bear testimony to the divine. Basically, it's the ability in Aveda for a person to overpower and eliminate any alien any alien desires. Sa'ak is a far more passive impact. It's more the idea of you have amunah in you, you have the capacity to reach great heights. In many ways greater than Atzilus' impact. Ak's impact is greater because when it does impact, when a person is Mesiras Nefesh or something else, it's very powerful. But you can't really call it a regular force that impacts you every day as the makif of a kesher of Atzilus does. And all this is not the neshama that's mamalas aguf. We're not talking about the force that is immanent and internalized. We're talking about forces that are so-called lifting you up higher than existence. So, the bottom line is, the transcendent forces, the ksarim, the makifim, of the different levels, each have their own particular impact. And as you get closer to our level, like I said, the department head of our particular level, it has a transcendent impact, but it's also it's not as you can't call it an equalizer. So we talk, let's say that every soul, every Jew has amunah pshuta. We talk about Avos Yisrael, that equal, no matter who it is, they have the Nakud of Yadus. You're talking about an Ak type of experience there, an Ak effect. If you're talking about that Rusa Deliba, and so to speak, the ability for people to work hard and daven and break their nefesh habamis, then you're going to find distinctions. Even though everybody has that amunah pshuta, but that's like a pilot flame. The Kesser of Atzilus impact is the impact that we actually have the ability to work and transform our kelim and transform our ears. It's also transformative in the sense outside of the system, but you're talking about already a work that is commensurate. It's much closer. It's an igul. Let's put it this way. It's like, I'm trying to figure out a good example for this would be. Like when we were in school, we used to have this, the teachers would tell us, the good, better teachers, they would say privately when they would inspire you, they say, okay, look, you should achieve as much as that other student should achieve is embarrassing. He struggles, doesn't have such a good head and stuff like that. In other words, we're not talking about now what people do on their regular. To go out of an effort of a person who is a more so-called refined or more developed mind, their Kesser Atzilus should have a deeper impact on them than the Kesser Atzilus of someone else who doesn't have such a particular gift. Whereas the Ak effect is equal. When two Jews give their lives for Mesiras Nefesh, it makes no difference who they were. Like when we say Simchas Torah, everybody dances equally. That's a makiv klali. Because literally everybody dances equally. A Rebbe and a Chassid and a great scholar, and you can't even tell. Because they're all equally dancing there. That's a makiv klali. If you give me an example of a makiv prati, would be makifim not of Simchas Torah. Sometimes the makifim of Sukkot would be an example. Even though that's also not good because in the Sukkah everybody can sit equally also. It's also an equalizer. I'm trying to think in Aveda. In Aveda would be the expectation you would have of a person who's a bigger Talmid Chacham to have a deeper Aveda, deeper Kabbalah sale because he's on a higher level. So it's not just an equalizer. I mean, you can give examples. The bottom line is transcendence has an impact on all of us and different levels and so on. I'm sure this will develop further as we go, but I think it's enough what I've said. I just want to make a distinction so it shouldn't seem like it's just there is a fundamental difference. Ak's impact is an equalizing impact because Ak, remember, is the picture of the entire existence. Kesser Atzilus speaks about Atzilus. As a matter of fact, he is going to explain it now because remember, we're neshamas not of Atzilus. We're rooted in Atzilus, but we're neshamas that go through the stations and we assume personality of Bri, Yitzir, and Asiyah. So the Aveda of a Makif, of your neshama, of let's say a neshama of Asiyah or Yitzir or Bria is going to be different than the Aveda of someone of Kesed Atzilus. Even though, like he said, all souls are rooted in Tahirihi, all souls are from Atzilus, and therefore they all have the general Ava Misoteres. But the interesting thing is what's happening here is, as you move from, the formula goes like this. The bigger the makif, the more equalization there is, but the more intensity there is when it's revealed. The smaller the makif, meaning more importantly, the makif that's closer to existence as it is now, the circles are more tailored, or I'm going to say tailored, I don't want to use tailored by makif.
Like a lavouche.
Yeah, as they come closer, their impact, there's more recognition of distinction, and intensity is not as powerful. So there are, in other words, you were able to say psychologically, map it out, you'd say the things that equalize us all, makes no difference who you are, come from a higher makif, that where every component is equal in a certain way. If you want to talk about the giluyim of somebody, this person has greater qualities. This one is a Talmud Chacham, this one has this avoided that. Even when we talk about the distinction of, let's say, the 12 Shvatim, each one had their way of serving. Shara Kel would be like a makif of the Ak.
Is an example of
the Shara Kel, where the Shara Kel talks about davening. So it says when the Jews went through Yukrish Shamsuf, it's split into 12. So each tribe had its, because each tribe, Mesilosei Yala, each one has its, like we have the 12, why it says in Pasha Nosei, why the offerings are repeated 12 times, same offerings, because it's the same offerings, but different service. Each Shevet has its service. Yisachar is the scholars. Zvulun are the business people. Yehuda is the leaders. Everyone has their role. But then there's a Shara Kel. Shara Kel means the gate that everyone goes through. This is sometimes used about the Nusach of davening. The Nusach of davening, you have in the Nuschais, each, what's called the word Nara Pashta, which means river, every river goes its way. So people have different Nusach in davening. But then there's a Shara Kel, there are things that equalizes everybody. So you find Naveda also, like when we say Aksher Kedushan B'Tzei Tzivanu equalizes all mitzvahs, like he spoke about mitzvahs. But then you say Shahakol Nir B'Dvarei, or Aksher Kedushan B'Tzivanu, Laniach Tefillin, or Mitzvah Sukkah, and Atilas Lulav, etc., etc. So you have the equalizer, and then you have the distinction. So you could have the Ratzon Klali, and you have a Ratzon Prati. God's desire for mitzvahs in general, that equalizes no matter what you do. It's God's desire, like he spoke earlier. And then there's the desire for this particular mitzvah. So as we spoke in the example with the building, that you have a structure. So the general desire is I want a home. But then there's a desire for each section of the home. And that also needs to be elevated into the process. That also needs the interface. So that you have to build a home in your particular way that's unique to your mission, unique to your skills. So there's a makif around your particular skills, and then there's of course the skills themselves, which is the pnimi. So really we have immanent energy, transcendent energy that's, we'd say, what's the word for it? Erech, be'erech. That's related to the pnimi, and then transcendent energy, which is shalei berech, which is beyond the immanent. So that's really the three forces at work here. Now of course in makif itself you have tirilot, tato, but that's the thing. So now it begins a new year, Tafrei Shayin Gimel.
What was the first one you said?
Immanent energy.
Immanent, and that's
Pnimi. That's
makif pnimi, or is it regular?
That's not a makif, it's pnimi.
Pnimi, you're talking about.
That's pnimi.
Regular or.
There's pnimi, there's the makif that's shaykh le pnimi, or you could say the makif hakorev, the close makif to the pnimi.
Right.
A makif harochik, the distant makif. He actually used the word makif hakorev. Right. By Atzilus, he used makif korev.
Can you give an example of immanent versus close makif and
Absolutely. As I said, I go back to Einstein. Immanent energy is always within the system. A close makif would be a mashpia that's unique to you and not to me. A mashpia, a rav that you listen to, he's a makif to you because he's an authority. He's like Rotzen. You're listening to you're not just getting his advice. We're not talking about a friend. Whereas a friend or your own internal processes is your pnimi at work. Your pnimi you may come to a rational approach to something, but a guy who knows more than you, that's like above you, so to speak, in knowledge and authority, is a makif prati. But he may not be a good rav to someone else, because he relates to you. You relate to him. So there is a relationship But it's a relationship of a teacher, of a makif and a pnimi. I'm just giving you, I don't know if that I call completely makif, because you could say a teacher is a pnimi a little, because he's teaching you. But I would say more like when he's a pasuk, not as an advisor. He's giving you an authoritative position. A rebbe would be not a mashpia. A rebbe would be a makif klali. He says something by Farbreinen, even though everyone can take it to their own personal meaning. And in a Yechidus he can speak individually, but when he's in a certain Rebbe mode, like a Moshe Rabbeinu, he's telling you the words of God. So you have much more authority there, but it's not as tailored. Then Mashpiyim would come in Farbreinen and say, okay, to each group they'd say, here's what the Rebbe said to Shabbos. Instead, that would be an example.
Or when you had Yechidus with the Rebbe.
Okay, Yechidus is already, the Rebbe is applying himself more. I'm not saying, that's what I'm saying. I was giving an example. When Moshe comes down from Har Sinai and says, Anochi Hashem, and I didn't say Anochi Hashem, but he repeats over, Hashem said so and so. There it's not, there all the Jews are equal. And everybody's hearing it, Lashon Yachid. And then there's Moshe sitting, and you come to him for advice. It's another story. Then he is applying himself more. The example of Markev Korav and Roch is the garment and the house. Pnimi is food, Mazon Levush Bayis. So Pnimi is food, Mazon internal, learning Torah. Then there's two levels of makif. Levush is a makif, because it surrounds you, but it's tailored to you. Meaning, from a garment you can tell the size of the person. A house you can't tell anything. So this has to be, you can tell sometimes whether it's a wealthy, that's another story. But the actual house, the parameters of the house means nothing. You can have a very small person living in a very large house. You can have a very large person living in a small house. So that's begashmis. In Aveda, I would say the difference is, Limud HaTorah is primi, you're understanding everyone in their level. Mitzvahs, the specific kavanah of a mitzvah, tzitzis, tefillin, neshek, is the Ratzon Prati. I want this, but it's the Ratzon now. And the Ratzon Klal is Ashek L'Shanim mitzvahs. If God says, I want all Taryag mitzvahs, like he says, don't weigh the difference between one mitzvah and the next. Don't say this is a more lenient mitzvah, this is a...
There's Or and Keli and there's Makav and Keli.
Exactly, correct. Exactly correct. And they're all, if you want their interface to work well, you need all three. You need the Pnimi, because that's the most on our terms. You need the Makiv Klali, Merachi, because that's the most on divine terms. And you need the Makiv Pnimi, that's what he said, is like a Mamutza. That middle desire, the desire for Atzilus, is the Mamutza between the general desire and the Pnimi. It's quite eloquent, it's like it's a structure, in other words, a science of transcendence. It's not just, it also explains another thing, like people ask the question, why can't I use foreign substances or other things to transcend? Because besides the fact that you're not owning it, and it's not primistic, and it's just like a trip somewhere, it also, it doesn't have an order. It's like being controlled by another force. Here, transcendence, interestingly, paradoxically, has levels. In other words, climbing the ladder is not just climbing the ladder of Pnimi, it's also climbing the ladder of transcendence. So if you think about it, it's an actually excellent interface force. Because what it's doing is introducing transcendence to each person according to commensurate to their level, and then they climb, and so on. So bottom line is, this is how it works. You're born into this world. The Malach created, the Malach made sure that Tzimtzum affected your soul, so consciously you forget the entire Torah that you were taught in your mother's womb. Which is why I see always education is always downhill, because after that, you can have the best yeshiva. It's never going to be better than what you learn 9 months. A teacher, divine messenger, an angel teaching you the entire Torah.
When is it? What month is it?
All 9 months. It says it was Tisha Chadashim.
Well, he gives you a clock just before you're born.
Right. So, yeah. Listen to this. I mean, I build on this, but you want to talk about a psychological model. That Gemara, to me, is tremendous, because it teaches a person that you're given not just the physiological development of the fetus, but it was infused with everything it needs to know for life. And the Alter Rebbe asked in Likutei Torah Shlach, so what's the point of teaching and making someone forget? So he says you only forget consciously. So that's why you resonate. When the child senses something's wrong, or the resonance of music, or resonance of right and wrong, is because the soul has embedded in it a barometer, what's the word I wanted to use? Barometer, like a compass.
Moral compass.
Right, a moral compass that parents can screw up and society screws up. But if we didn't get in the way and we cultivated it, a child would naturally know what's right and wrong.
But the neshama is coming from a very high place.
Anyway, my point.
What does he need? What does he need to sit and learn Torah when he's coming from a place where he knew?
Yeah, because coming into this difficult world, my friend, he's going to have to contend with a very deep symptom. You make it sound like you don't have a hard avoid in this world. With all these levels, even with the learning of the Torah, we've got challenges. You ask me a nice theoretical question, but the fact is, even with this learning of Torah, is it easy?
How do you change them?
No, I asked you a question. Is it easy? It changes because it gives it also inside the body. The soul is learning it now while it's developing with the body. The Neshama, look, this is Mashbiyan essay.
You know, it's the process.
This is the Mashbiyan essay.
Also, the process of learning he gets.
No, Mashbiyan essay.
But also the Mashbiyan essay. Not just Mashbiyan means not just the oath. Mashbiya. Tihi tzaddik, it's feeding it. Satiate. Right. So let's put it this way: the soul can use whatever it can get, my friend, in this battle. So you give it whatever you can, because it's formidable. Look at the world. Look at the world. Anyway, the point being is, so then we're made to forget. I'm saying I wanted to explain something, and then begins a long, hard journey upward. Okay. And you need chinuch and tzar gidul banim and the whole works. But if you talk about the map, essentially what we're doing here is the kelim are weak and immature and small and fragile, I should say, vulnerable, impressionable. They slowly begin to receive air. I'm talking about a healthy education now. If you give me the map, the Hasidic map of all of life works like this. You come into the world, everything is concealed. Embedded plenty, you've got everything you need in your arsenal. But it's all unconscious, all potential, all inside of that. It's pure soul. A child is the closest thing to God because it's God's package. It's God's creation. It's like freshly fallen snow. Both neshama-wise and body-wise. But God wants avodah and wants pnimius. So if no pnimius, a child is as close as it gets. Don't touch a child and you have God's a gift from God. But now he wants the tir b'tachtenim. He wants the world to be transformed. So the child goes through the painstaking process of having to depend on flawed and mortal parents to try to be smart enough to know how to give the child not their own wisdom but God's wisdom. I mean, I'm just stating it as it is.
Yeah.
And they begin to teach the child education, love, nurturing, so on. The kelim of the child absorb slowly. As they absorb more and more, this child begins to relate to pnimi. It has an makiv, like everyone does, meaning it has an element of faith and transcendence, but it's not yet, you can't call it deliberate transcendence. The child's transcendence is natural to it. The child is enchanted, not due to its seeking something higher, because the child by nature is godly. A soul is godly. But then comes the stage where you develop the intelligence. As the mind develops, it can go both ways. The mind can become a force of arrogance and ego, more yesh, or the mind teaches you the truth, that your goal here is to realize that you're not just an and a keli and take care of your needs, that you become responsive to something higher and greater than yourself. So that's makif hakarev. The ideas that we learn about the hidden love, even the Torah that's embedded in you. And slowly you climb to the makif harachik, where you come to realize that there's some equalizing force that's beyond all of existence. And not just bitl hayesh, but bitl b'mitzias. And that leads you back to the path of the kav. So just like the kav brought this energy here and diminished it, you climb back the ladder, and the kav leads you all the way to the tzimtzum and beyond. And till the point that you can relate to a reality that's completely different than our own, and now it can be integrated because you did it in a spoon-fed way. Like the teacher who begins teaching the child very, very bite-size, spoon feeds Aleph, Beis, Gimel. Aleph, Beis, Gimel become broaden out, expand, you start learning words, ideas, to the point that you can experience a transcendence, you can experience and reach not only what the teacher knows, but even beyond what the teacher knows. That's the picture. Now, if we built our Moisdes Chinuch around this model, and figure out how to take care of each stage of this, and it should all be aligned with this, we'd be in good shape.
Not one package fits all.
For sure not. That's also part of it. But still, there are certain children of 5 years old, even if they're different, they can go into one class because they're still at that same development stage generally, and there's I remember as a kid, one of the things that bothered me a lot when we were in yeshiva was they would put in our class guys that were 5-6 years older than us. It was like very weird. Even as a kid, I couldn't relate to it. We had guys that they would come, they didn't know so much. I remember a guy, Misha, he came from Russia. He had a beard. We were 7 years old, and he was 13, 14. And he was a nice guy. I felt bad for him, because first of all, it's so humiliating. And second, more important, psychologically, we're not the same. It doesn't matter. He may know a lot less Torah than us. The facts he knows less. But he's not in the development stage. They don't do that anymore. That was a convenient effort to try to, because they had no class for him, so they had nowhere to stick him in. So they stuck him in. Today, I think that became like something you don't do at all. That you never do that. I'm just pointing out there's a wisdom to the fact of the matter is God made it smart. I remember the first day, once you're 17, 18, I start saying, the only people I knew were my classmates, basically. And I said, hey, I'm not compatible with these guys. They're like weird. Some people I grew up my whole life with. I'm not saying weird. They were great guys, but we happen to just hashgacha pratis. We're in the same class. But it's not like someone put us together. We just grew up in the same community, and they put us in the same class. You come to realize that you're an independent entity, but it's interesting. Then I realized, something. God is very smart. The earlier years of development, He doesn't let your distinct entity does not disturb your ability to be with classmates, and that's very healthy because you learn to socialize, you learn to interact. Everything in its time. That's the thing. Yeah. Anyway, so we move on to next mimer, which, as I said, is unique because the whole chapter 68 is a summary, which is very good. Thank God. The Rebbe Rashab is going to help us reality check in case we got lost in the woods. So this is Rosh Hashanah and Gimel. If we're really living with the times, we'd say L'shana Tova Tikasevu, L'shana Tova. We're about to come to that anyway, but we're a little ahead of the curve here. So we're doing Rosh Hashanah a month early. Chodesh today, which is good. I like that. So by the time the rest of the world catches up with us in Ayin Beis, you're well advanced.
This Rosh Chodesh sets the stage for all the Rosh Chodeshes of the whole year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very important.
I don't know if any of you get the Club 72 emails. I just sent it out on Friday. Late. I did, because this past Re'eh, I sent it late. Re'eh, there was no Maimer in Ayin Beis. It skipped.
Really?
So I went to do research. Why? Because there is a Re'eh Maimer. In that's not part of the Hemshech.
So what's the reason?
I can't figure out. So I wrote. Did you read what I wrote? I don't know if. Do any of you get these?
I noticed it after Shabbos.
You have to subscribe to it because it's free, but you have to subscribe. I'll send you the form. Subscribe to it. I do summaries of that weekly Maimer 100 years ago. It's a few Maimer back where we're up to. So it's interesting. I did a whole research. It's great stuff. The Rebbe Rashab summers would go what we would call vacation, quote unquote. So I wrote up a whole list of every vacation place he went every summer from doing his leadership. I found it, the Friedrich Rebbe, I gathered together. And so he went to a place called Zaolsha, which was 30 kilometers from Lubavitch, the summers of 1911 through 1915. So for he was in Zaolsha because the Hanocha, we have Hanocha, Rabbi Simpson made it. It's not the Rebbe himself did not write the Maimer, it's one of the Bochum wrote it. And he writes on top, Benois Desha, which means in the pastures of green. Meaning referring to like so-called vacation spot, Zaolsha, he writes that. So first I thought, okay, so maybe that's why, because he went away from Lubavitch. And
what was Lubavitch? It's also a nice desha. What is it? It wasn't a city.
It doesn't matter, but Lubavitch, I know, because the fact is, once the Rebbe Rashab left Lubavitch for good in October 1915, after Tishrei, Tafrei Shayim Vov, he never said Ayin Beis again. That was the last Maimer in Lubavitch. That's known. Hold on. It doesn't matter. You're talking Gashmis. Lubavitch is the America, is the center of the thing. The Rebbe Rashab has a whole thing that he would only wear Streimel in Lubavitch. Even though Lubavitch definitely says on Dacha he wouldn't wear one. Lubavitch has its power. I understand that. It was a relationship. As a matter of fact, the Friedrich Rebbe, after Tafresh Pei Aleph, went back to Lubavitch and said a Maimer there in Elul in 1921.
Wow.
You know that? Yeah. He went back to Lubavitch. Yeah, it's printed. I'll show it to you.
You go to Sputnik?
I don't know what he. It's printed. He went back in Lubavitch in 1921. Said a mimer there in El. Maybe Pei Beis even. Give me a Tafresh Pei Beis right here. See?
You think
Sif Memorim. Yeah.
Re'ez on a
I think it's Pei Aleph.
Re'ez is seeing. It's such a high level. You think he would say something.
Here, Lubavitch. Yeah, I'm correct. Ani Kel Elikim Ekra. Yem Gimel Sheftim in the evenings. Tov Mem Zayin. Doesn't matter. He went back. You ask a question. I'm going to see it here.
The house was still there. Everything was still there.
Yem Gimel Sheftim Tafresh Pei Beis Lubavitch.
No, the house was there.
He went intentionally.
The Zal was there.
I don't know what was there, but something was there. There's a whole Here's a whole thing. Tov Pei Vav. Here's a Rishim about his Bikur in Lubavitch. Here's a whole a description. Someone wrote up in a diary a description of his visit to Lubavitch. Yeah. Kayes Tafresh Pei Beis, the summer of 22.
That's the last time
That's the last time.
Rabbi was in Lubavitch.
He says like this: when I went to Lubavitch that summer, the Friedrich Rebbe is writing in his Igris. When I went to that summer of 1922, Nivhalti, I was shocked on the site, on the Shamim, how everything was like desolate. Rachmana litzlan. That's what he writes. He says, Azal Gadol, in the big Zal of the yeshiva was a town theater. They turned it into a theater. He says the room where my father would sit became a Beis HaMishpat, a court, a local courthouse. He says in the rooms where they lived, it became a place where the city council was. In my room where I was, it became Beis HaPkidis Hayrani, the officials, yeah. And Babayis Chemes HaSefer, everything, and the place where the school was, he says the whole burned down. Yeah, he goes on. He describes everything. He says the oil, the base measures. He goes through everything.
He had been there since 1915.
Right.
Since 1915.
Yeah. The yeshiva stayed a little longer, but then it also closed.
The
last one, Vayera Tofresh Ayin Vav is the last Maimer in Ayin Beis. That was the last Shabbos. The Rebbe Rashab. Anyway, because the war, Rostov, the war was coming. The World War I.
Does it hear that last Maimer?
In the volume 2. Then the volume 2. After that, he only wrote. He didn't continue to say. So that's what I thought first. That's also, maybe that's why I connected to Lubavitch. But then I found the Friedrich Rebbe, Nachamu, was also said as a Olsha. And that is part of the Hemshech. And he says that after Shavuos, 19 Ayin Beis, the Rebbe Rashab went to Olsha till approximately before Rosh Hashanah. So it's clearly apparent, unless he went back every Shabbos, but he didn't. Nachamu for sure he didn't. So it's clear that he did say. So the only thing you can say is that. So I don't know why Re'eh is not part of the Hemshech. It's hard to say. Clearly, he did not say the Hemshech when he went out of country. But however, the years of Ayin Beis, if he went to Germany or France or other places, he did not continue the Hemshech. We have Maimorim, but not from the Hemshech. But that you could say was practical because the people who heard the Hemshech weren't with him. So what's the point? And the people there didn't know what he said before, so it would be like...
He started in 1912, right?
Shavuos 1912. I wrote all this up. I love the historical...
Titanic
Yeah.
was a great...
Yeah, the historical details are...
article about Titanic?
Yeah.
You got to read that.
The historical details are very fascinating.
Yes.
How the Rebbe Rashab...
I was in Montan.
Yeah, that's where we would go in the winters.
That's when you go into
The winters. No, south of France.
I heard he did that at Ayin Beis there too, no?
That's where he developed the whole Ayin Beis. He developed it. Not he said it. He developed it. That winter, 1912,
Yes.
is when he developed Ayin Beis in his mind there.
In Montan.
In Menton.
And he started saying it
Shavuos in Lubavitch.
in 19.
Yeah. Basically winter, like 6 months later, 5 months later.
Actually, they had to get away.
I saw the house that he was with.
I know. People say it's,
Yeah, you can see it.
It's a beautiful place, yeah?
It's very nice, and it's You can see in the gate. It's a stone gate. You can see the place where it's not non-Jews live there now. But you can see where the mezuzah was. There's an indentation.
Right.
The Mitzvah Rebbe stayed.
Okay, anyway, interesting. So bottom line is, I don't really know why, but I wrote up the whole thing. The Frierdiker Rebbe says that because of health, he had to be in warm countries and in Chef Hayom, and on the shore. So the Rebbe Rashab did go almost every year. 1915, of course, when he went to Rostov, was a whole. There's interesting places he went to in the summer. One place was at Mayone Rufu, like the springs, healing springs. He went to a place called Liman, that's near Odessa. They say where the river Dniester goes into the Black Sea. He describes it all every summer. After Shavuos, he would go. Trust me, it was not what we call vacation. The Maimorim, the Maimorim, that he said Maimorim these places, so it was not just sitting around and shooting the breeze. Right, exactly. Well said. So now let's continue on.
The Middle Rebbe didn't travel. The only Rebbe that everybody traveled against.
The Rebbe has the sikhs about that. The Baal Shem Tov traveled, the Maggid didn't. The Alter Rebbe traveled, the Middle Rebbe didn't. The Tzemach Tzedek, I mean, he doesn't go on after that. But it's mashma also, the Frierdiker Rebbe traveled, the Rebbe didn't. Keme Al Tanach, the Rebbe speaks. Sukkahs, they're Shpizn sikhs. There were two drachim. It was like Avram Avinu traveled, Yitzchak didn't. Yeah. There's two ways of.
It's a very harsh place in the summer. Mosquitoes, bugs, everything.
I heard it's a harsh place all the time. You've been there, yeah? When I was teaching Samar Vov, a woman I know, she comes to one of my classes, so she went to visit there. She was shocked. She said, "Here's where a Rebbe developed Samar Vov," because like you'd think, like in New York, a big city. But she was amazed. It's interesting. You don't need that place. You could sit under a tree and develop the biggest ideas in history. Who says, It just goes to show you.
You don't have any videos of Samar Vov, do you?
No, I didn't do videos. I have tapes. Some tapes. But also not a lot.
You put them online?
I can put them online. I did like 30 tapes from the beginning. First 3-4 Maimorim.
It'd be great if you put them online.
I did it differently than I did it here. There I went... That was like a lot of explanation there. Anyway, Zeh Hayom Tchilas Masecha, page 127, chapter 68. Zeh Hayom Tchilas Masecha Zikaron L'Yom Rishon. So Rosh Hashanah. This is the second night of Rosh Hashanah. So Zeh Hayom, this is the day of the beginning of your Ma'asecha, of your actions, of your creations. Zikaron L'Yom Rishon, a reminder to the first day. We say this on Rosh Hashanah. Zeh, this is the day, today, is referring to the day of Rosh Hashanah. It's called the beginning of Masecha, of your creations. Seemingly not understood. It's not understood. Famous question. Isn't Rosh Hashanah the sixth day of creation? The 25th of El, the world was created. Rosh Hashanah Yom Vav. Shana is the sixth day. So what do you mean this is the beginning of your creation? And that's also understood from the second half of the statement. Reminds us that Rosh Hashanah ain't a Yom Rishon. Reminds us of the day one. The first day. Shu Yom Vav, because it's the sixth day. Shabai Nivra Adam Harishon. That's the sixth day when Adam Harishon was created. So the question is, so why do you call it Tchilas Masecha this sixth day? We also understand what's once you say Zayim, what's the meaning of Shoshana being a reminder of day one? What's that mean? So now Samaches, usually a mimer would go now, the Hoven calls it Yesh Lahag Demashin is Bar Leil. Instead he goes now. And I think this is because it's Rosh Hashanah Maimer. So it's like the people who came Rosh Hashanah, he's like summing up everything he said till now. So chapter 68 is a entire chapter summary. And then he continues on. I'm sure the summary has plenty of additional elements.
So you had people that didn't hear, so that
I'm not... So maybe we have to look at other Yom Tovim, whether he does the same thing. Shavuos, definitely. Shavuos Ayin Gimel. Remember, after this will now go all the way through Vayigash. Every Shabbos, I believe, there's a mimer. And then Vayigash Ayin Gimel, which means winter Ayin Gimel. 1913 now we're talking. well, it's around the end of 1912, I would say. The Rebbe Rashab stops the Hemshech, and then that resumed till Shavuos Ayin Gimel. So you have a whole period, basically from December 1912 till, let's say, June 1913, the Hemshech stopped being said. Didn't mean he stopped writing, but the delivery stops. So this will now go. So basically, Shavuos 1912, let's say June 1912 to December 1912, more or less, almost every week, and then a break for around 5 months, and June 1913 he resumes.
But you have the Maimorim here.
There's no Maimorim in between. No, he said other Maimorim. We have a volume of Maimorim of Ayin Beis that are not from the Hemshech.
The writing continued. What is that?
The writing of, because he wrote, no, of both of other Maimorim, but also of the Hemshech. The Hemshech was written before it was delivered. We're talking about delivering, saying it on Shabbos.
He didn't plug it to, he didn't catch it.
No, he did. Then later he connects it to those parshas.
Oh, what is it? Oh.
No, but there's nothing in those weeks. Remember, the Hemshech was written without any parshas altogether. It was just a flow. He wrote that before he even said it.
Oh, I see.
The delivery is only those weeks. Then when he added the beginnings and ends, you only have till Vayigash a beginning and end, and then Vayigash continues Shavuos. The next Maimer that has a beginning and end, the Hemshech continues Shavuos. That's all. And in between those weeks, those months, he did say Maimarim. That's what I'm saying.
This is a summary of
Samach Vav is also similar. Remember, he traveled also. He traveled in the winters. Like he probably went to Menton and other places at the end of 1912, like in the beginning of 1913.
This is a summary of which chapters? How many? All the Psalms?
No, I would say this is a summary from probably chapter. I think from Nun Tes. Yeah, 69 probably, 59. We'll see. And now, what is derived from, what we conclude from, what we derive from. Yetzin literally means it comes out from, but is derived from everything that was discussed earlier. Who the B'cholos is that in the general structure, the general chained order, if you want to put it, like a chain, shtalshlos. Here's Beis Madregas. There are two levels. The truth is, if I would say, Mashnas Bar Leil is every chapter from 1 till 650, 67 goes into this category. Then Nishtalshus, there's two levels. I told you, from chapter 2 to 46 is about Pnimi. From 47 till around 59 is Pnimi and Makif. From 49 on is Makif. Till here. 59, I'm sorry. I say 46 through 59, through 58. 47 through 58 is both Makif or Pnimi, and then 59 begins Makif, and now he's summing up the whole thing. So he says, yes, Beis Madregas, Pnimi ve'er Makif. There's an immanent energy and there's a transcendent energy, is how we're defining it. Literally, Pnimi means internal, integrated. Makif means surrounding, encompassing. The B'Sheira Sharish Be'er Sof Shalifnei Tzimtzum, because in the first root in the infinite light before the Tzimtzum Sheira Sheir Pnimi Eina Es Sfiras Agnuzis. Yeah, absolutely. He's talking about from the beginning of the Hemshech, because this is not Esfiras Agnuzis is far earlier. So he's summing it all up here. He's giving us the summary of the whole thing. So it's a very vital, connecting interface chapter in the Hemshech itself. So the root before the Tzimtzum we're talking. In the first root, the root of the immanent energy of the 10 hidden spheres in the infinite light. The Inyan Mula Hoyer Es. Their inyan and their purpose is to radiate in the worlds. Remember we spoke, they have a purpose, to affect, to impact the worlds. This is what God envisioned or estimated within himself or allocated, and we evaluated, we have all the words that we use, Shir Atzmei. He evaluated and estimated within himself, L'hoyer b'midah v'gvul. So the infinite divine energy before the Tzimtzum envisions and allocates and estimates, so to speak, he determines that there's going to be he's going to radiate with parameters, midah and gvul, with measure and parameter. But these 10 spheres, the way they are in the infinite light before the Tzimtzum, they're completely shapeless, formless. Not just relative pshitas, like pshitas ein mamish, as he calls it. But pshita, the fisha ein b'chinas mitzias nikeres klal, because they're not in any way a distinguishable, a distinct entity. Hareim b'chinas pshitas b'chinas yisachdus b'yisarvus. Remember these words? Goes back a while. They're pshitas, literally means simple. I would say means simple, meaning have no gradations, they're seamless. B'chinas yisachdus, and they're a state of unity, v'yisarvus, and a conglomerate, mixed together, homogenized. Composite? No, I wouldn't say composite, because we're not talking about composite as a composite of pieces. Here you're talking about sarvas that they're just like all one liquid gel, like one big nebula. No, because it's not details combined. They're in a state. They're all in a state of. They're not in a state of 10 spheres.
You mix different ingredients, you mix them all together.
There's a special octus.
It's even deeper than that. See, that's Hisarvus is lower than Hisarvus in a way.
Yeah, sure, because
Yeah.
there's mix.
But he discussed it earlier. He said clearly that we're not talking about this. This is even not even a quantum state. This is even before quantum.
Every space,
Right.
time, and object. It's above object.
The truth is, if you enter there, you would not recognize anything.
God's mind. He wouldn't say anything.
Right. But God wanted to have us in His picture there. That's the point. No. But even deeper than that, because the mind, the brain is a brain at least, it's not a heart. Va'idei tzimtzum.
And that's the ultimate thing we have to get to.
As I said, it's hard for us to even envision spiritual asiya. Forget about this level. Va'idei tzimtzum, and through the concealment, the tzimtzum, the black hole, the quantum leap of the tzimtzum, nimshachu liyus spheres pratis. They're transmitted to become in distinct spheres. You have to really understand these things through the process of elimination. Think of it like this: if there was no Esser spheres hagnuzis, and it would just be a tzimtzum and suddenly spheres, we'd have no way back to God's mind, basically, because God has the potential in Atzmos also to create 10 spheres. Spheres hagnuzis is not Atzmos. No. In Atzmos, you don't even say it. Remember, he said in Atzmos, there's the level where there's infinite spheres, and there's a level where there's no spheres altogether, and then the Atzmos is before Oyer even. Remember, Atzmos is built in Metzias Nimtza. Atzmos is an existence we can't even discuss because it doesn't exist like we exist. We can't relate to it in any person. We have examples of Atzmos.
This is sort of an emanation.
Only relative speaking to us, but it's not an emanation. It's God wanted us to connect with Him. He could have made everything begin after the tzimtzum, think of it this way, and He made it not begin after the tzimtzum. He wanted it within His own presence to have all these things envisioned before they would actually come to be. He doesn't need it for Him. An artist has to envision a piece of art before he creates it, because he's a human being. There's no way you're going to create art without envisioning it. But God wanted us to have a relationship with Him, so therefore He chose to envision it. Basically, as I said, if the spheres would emerge after the tzimtzum, that would be our ceiling. That's all we can get to, and everything after that is the what we call the big beyond. It would be a transcendence that's not possible to bring into our being. The fact that the infinite divine light that can do infinite possibilities chose and determined to make 10 spheres, however you define that entity, I don't think you could imagine it. That's why I said through the process of elimination you could imagine it. All you could say is, like we say, Chakim v'lei b'chach b'yediyah. What does this mean? Think about what it means. We have wisdom. So you say God is wise, but not with knowledgeable wisdom that we have, not with the knowledge that we know. Basically what you're really saying is, you can't say He's not wise, so you're saying He's not wise. That's what you're really saying.
That's the way the Rambam says it.
We ask me questions. This is a thing we say in Pasach Hayom every Friday. What Rambam? What are you referring to? Which Rambam? And it says in Tanya, it says that this is talking not Tzilas. The Rambam is talking in Eretz and Kalim after the Simpson. We're talking here at levels that are. So we say God. It says God is. So you're basically saying, is God wise? The answer really is no. But He's not. You can't say He's not wise because wisdom came from Him. So you can't call Him Chachma. So you say He's a Chachma b'lei Chacham Yediyah. Would be He exists, but not like we exist. He's wise, but not like we're wise.
level Moshe Rabbeinu?
What is this? I don't know. All I can tell you is the essence is Lifnei Tzimtzum.
He wanted to see his face.
I don't know. You want to compare it to that? It helps you, fine. If the Rebbe Rashab said so, I would say for sure. You could say the face can be many levels. Face can be Atzilus too. There's a lot of levels how you describe the face. Depends. Most people can't see Atzilus and live. Okay, it says in Tanya, Shaykh al-Munah, that if you saw the chayes that was inside of you right now, you couldn't live. You couldn't exist. So, Moshe Rabbeinu, face usually means a higher level. Usually means, is it Atzmus? Atzmus? I don't know. Atzmus does not manifest in seeing or not seeing. You can experience Atzmus, you don't have to see Atzmus to experience Atzmus. What are you trying to understand? You want to understand Atzmus and Giluyim? It's a whole discussion that it's not. You have to erase almost your whole hard drive if you want to go there, because I don't know what you heard from others. No, fine. No, I'm saying the way to get Atzmus, you have to go through process of elimination. Atzmus, the mere fact, the whole mistake, every philosopher, and even Mekubalim, some made God is not a greater version of us. He's not a perfect version of humanity. That's not God. So eliminate that. Most of us think of God as being, okay, I'm powerful, He's all powerful. It's all on our terms. As soon as you think like that, you're not talking about the God in God's terms. You're thinking about a God and God in your terms. Like, the principle in the school is our authority, and God's the biggest principle. This is the fallacy of everyone's visioning of God.
And in davening, you said it.
It's a juvenile. Look, that's a big part of Chassidus is to eliminate this fairy tale God.
That we say in davening.
No, I didn't say no. You think in davening, not what it says in davening. You're saying what you think in davening, what davening says.
Seven characters.
Okay, so right, exactly. What does that mean? It's hundreds of whole Kabbalah comes to answer that question. Did you know this? Did you ever read Sharish Mitzvahs Atfilah from the Tzemach Tzedek? She talks about this at length. There was a whole machlekes between the Baal Kabbalah and the Baal Nigla, who says, when you daven, you're thinking about God, you're thinking about Chesed and Gvura. And it's a whole problem, because you can't daven to Chesed and Gvura, you're supposed to daven to God. There's only one God. We don't have intermediaries. We don't have, what's the difference between saying a star is God's power and saying Chesed is God's power? They're both not God. It would be Avodah Zarah ultimately. Exactly, love V'leila Medesav. So that's what he says to the Mekubal. Rabbi Tzemach Tzedek brings it in Tefillah. How do you daven? So he says, Ani mispal l'daza atinuk. I don't know about all these levels. I daven like a child davens. There's God, and that's all. I don't know about anything else. So the question, of course, then is: so what are all these levels, and why do we talk about l'cha Hashem Agdula and what is going on? Exactly. This is the whole discussion whether spheres are elikus or not. The whole thing is discussed. Are the energies divine? Is there a shape? Is there no shape? That's why the Mekubalim, many of them hold that in the Ur there's no shape.
Or portion.
Right, exactly. Because and when we're davening to the Ur, so to speak, but the Ur doesn't have any pshit. It's God through the Ur. I mean, this is a long discussion. This is a big part of Kabbalah and Chassidus, how you understand, how you reconcile that. It's ultimately the interface.
And what about Salam Elokim in Chumash? When it says that there,
you got the same problem initially.
So God initiated that.
Now what it says what it says. The question is what it means. Let's put it this way: without Chassidus and Primus HaTorah, you're going to be lost. It's going to be very difficult for you to. Yeah. Because the simple interpretation would be is that there is something of godliness within our image. Then the question you have is, so what exactly is God? That's why if you really take out Chassidus, the opinions of Tzimtzum, Kipshute, and so on, is that God removed Himself from all of existence. What we have is just reflections. It's like God watching us through a window, that type of thing. See, that's a simpler way. That makes it. That solves a lot of problems. Because that way, we're not talking about God. We don't have a relationship with God Himself. We have a relationship with God's creation, so to speak. But then you have big problems with Achdus Hashem. Because then what happens with God? So then the God is there. The God that's above existence, is He connected to existence? That's where you get problems. So the classical answer that's not a Chassidus would say, we don't get involved in these mysteries. We just follow what God says in the Torah, and it's not up to us to understand. That's why the prohibition against learning Kabbalah and so on. This is a shitta. This is a shitta. Don't go there. You're a mortal human being. Don't go there. It's not your business.
Had this, that sheet, and he's a Makubal.
You heard this somewhere, or you read this somewhere? Okay. The reason I'm not, it's fine. Or Miguel's a great man. The problem is when you talk about these things, you need to know exact sources, or else you get yourself into trouble. Okay. I don't want to start dismissing the Gra because you have to be a big gun, and it's called a gun even by the Rabbi. The difference in Misnag and Chassidim is a whole other discussion. You know what exactly the Gra was against or wasn't against. The general consensus is that the Gra was misinformed, and the Alter Rebbe did want to meet him and wanted to clarify, because the Gra also, the instigation against Chassidim was that the Chassidim are like Shabtai Tzvi. That was the impression they were getting, that they're breaking halacha, they're doing weird things, they're not learning, So when you hear that, and Shabtai Tzvi wasn't much longer before that, you're suspicious. I would, if I was a skeptic living in some town and there's no internet and stuff like that, even that, you start thinking, okay, what's this new movement? So it shouldn't be surprised or bother us that there was a resistance. Why would everyone embrace the Baal Shem Tov suddenly? Who says he's accurate? Torah Jew wants to know. Someone came to you and said there's a, No, I'm just trying to point out. But people like the Maggid and the Talmidim of the Maggid, like the Alter Rebbe, major scholars, they went and they went to see. They didn't by hearsay. He went to the Maggid, and then when they saw things, they embraced. They were all started as non-Chassidim. The Alter Rebbe was not a born Chassid. Okay, his father went to the Baal Shem Tov and so on, but I mean to say everybody was a Tzuge Kumen, as they said, But the bottom line was, then I would call that like the cultural fears and suspicions, like the Rebbe says many times. But what do we see? B'Poel, the generations past, we see Chassidim didn't break halacha. Adarabba, they intensified it. And who puts on 2 pairs of tefillin, and who's mahadir, etc., etc. So the proof. So now we don't have the doubts, so to speak. But there's a whole other discussion, is the doctrine of Chassidus, and the doctrine before Chassidus, or those that didn't learn Chassidus. And there's far more fundamental issues. This I can understand. There was distrust. And today the Rebbe would say, listen, come and look and see what Chassidim do. They tell me if there's something to distrust, But there's a doctrine, and then a political element developed as well. That's why the Rebbe was so upset about what was going on in Bnei Brak. He says he's reviving a machlekes that already was going away. Yeah, and was getting better. Achdus Yisrael, because we don't have any more. And what machlekes did he revive? A machlekes of what? Of distrust when there was not knowledge. How could you bring back and say, he's basically saying, since Chabad doesn't sleep in a sukkah, that means they're Shabtai Tzvi, because, So if the Gra had that fear, okay, because he doesn't know. But then they found out. That was what the Rebbe disturbed most, because what are you doing now? You're bringing back, it's like the Japanese fighting World War II when the world was over, There's nothing to fight. What are you fighting about? But they wanted to make it. So there's a lot of confusion on their end. It's very political, and it's not like. So if you want to have a machlekes about Tzimtzum Kipshute, my teacher says Tzimtzum Kipshute, your teacher doesn't say it. Fine, let's discuss that. But they turned it into a personal battle. That was the thing the Rebbe upset most, like delegitimizing Chassidus, which has no base. Why would you could say it's not my derech, but to delegitimize it. But then there's the whole discussion. What we're saying now is doctrine. With Alter Rebbe in Perek Zayin, Shayach Ramuna says not those that make the mistake and attribute like a physical element to God and make it Tzimtzum Kipshute, that God removed Himself. But this is a long discussion which I don't want to have now because it's not in this mimer. But suffice it to say that, remember, you're talking about great people who said this. So the Gra was not the first that said Tzimtzum Kipshute. This you probably didn't hear. The first one is the Mishnah's Chassidim, who's one of the Talmidim of the Arizal. And we accept him. He's a full authority. In a sefer called Yesher Levov, he advocates this position of Tzimtzum Kipshute. He actually gives the example of a king who looks into the windows of a bathroom, because God can't be inside Makom HaKlippos. It's not the Gra's example; it's the Mishnah Chassidim example. I'm pretty familiar with the subject because I did a lot of research on it, and the Rebbe spoke about it at length, etc. It's a long discussion. And it's not so simple. It's quite complicated.
So Rebbe said that their shit is also correct.
He could have done it that way, correct. But it requires more discussion. But I will just suffice it to say, to go back to the point, The Alter Rebbe was makabel from his teachers. That's what the Rebbe says, that we have a relationship with Atzmus. And that Atzmus did want to have a relationship, not just after the Tzimtzum, but before. And as such, developed a whole structure of how we connect. Now, I could bring sources, like for example, when you say that God says, don't just put on tefillin and keep Shabbos and eat kosher, but v'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha, v'yadaitas Hashem Elokecha, Hashem Elokecha tira. These are relationship words: love, awe, understanding. So they would argue, okay, you relate to the love of God that relates to you, the God that gives you life, that gives you food, gives you children, gives you health. But clearly, Chassidus, and you see Ayin Beis goes all the way, wants a relationship all the way with Atzmus. And ultimately, Achdus is that we have a relationship with Atzmus, which is why we have to have all the painstaking arguments for Eir, that Eir is an energy, but it makes no shinui in the source. This all comes to answer our relationship with Atzmus. The simplest way would say we don't have a relationship with Atzmus, just have a relationship with lower levels, and then Atzmus is not in the picture, so there's no problems. God doesn't get changed. There's no in the immutability. What do they call the omnipresence and immutability of God remains intact. The problem becomes when you have a relationship. How could you have a relationship and it shouldn't be reciprocal? That's where the dilemmas come, and that's really a big part of Chassidus Chabad has come to answer that question. Agdus with the highest levels.
So you said to have a relationship with Atzmus, you'd have to erase your hard drive and have it. Where in Chassidus is the most detailed understanding of Atzmus? Is it in Ayin Beis in further chapters, or do they get into that?
I like the question. It's a good question because I have that question. You're not going to like the answer. No, it's everywhere and nowhere. Let me explain what I mean. It's between the lines of all this that we're learning. You can't go there unless you go through the earlier chambers. That's the thing. And we wish we could get just learn that mimer. So you just learned that mimer, and what do you have to learn the rest of the mimer? It would be like, the bottom line is that Atzmus so inextricably bound himself to Ishtalshalos that you can't get to him without Ishtalshalos. Now you can have certain glimpses, like we said, of Tehiri love, Mesiras Nefesh, of Amunah, so on and so forth, of Tshuva, but you can't really have a relationship without going through all the levels. So there are Maimorim that talk more about Atzmus. I can tell you which Maimorim they are, but they're part of the picture. There's no way you can learn them without learning this. Even here in Ayin Beis, he refers to this at the end of chapter 49. He refers to the Atzmus. And then there's Maimorim, Tavshin Zayin, Tiku, Matzazu. I could show you Maimorim, we'll talk about Atzmus, but it's not gonna. It just talks about it that there's elements of Atzmus in our reality. But
having a relationship with Atzmus.
Remember, the same Atzmus that you want to have is the same Atzmus that created a Tzimtzum and a Seder Shtalshlos. So how are you going to get them without going through his tools? That's his tools. Bottom line is, what I was getting to was it's hard to imagine for humans like us, the Eir Lifnei Tzimtzum. We just can't envision it. If we could, there wouldn't be needed Tzimtzum. Why didn't just God why would he need a Tzimtzum for if we can just relate to the Eir and Sof Lifnei Tzimtzum? The Tzimtzum says you can't even leave one glimpse of light. It has to be a complete black hole. Because if you leave one glimpse of light, we would never be able to emerge. So that means you can understand how difficult it is for us to relate to before Tzimtzum type, pre-Tzimtzum reality. Pre-Tzimtzum reality would have to be meaning you have to cease to exist to be able to relate to it. In a way, that's what Hashem... Yes, exactly. So you want to be there? You can't be you. You want you and there? No way. But la'asud lave, that's why the kav doesn't reach the bottom. It reaches the bottom, the whole black hole ceases to be, because the rest gets filled up with, there's no ma'alamata. The kav is the key. The tzimtzum and the kav are the key to keep the balance. It's like, imagine a tsunami, and the command to tell water not to stop by a breach. What would happen? What would happen was, at the beginning of creation, the whole world was covered in water. We could not exist if water flooded us. So we say, Mola Oretz Deis Hashem, the world will be filled with divine knowledge, the waters cover the sea. Then we'll be able to, because we'll have enough strong kalim to absorb it. But today we can't. or now we're at the verge, whatever. But being, in other words, existence, that's the whole point why he keeps saying, we learned this earlier, that if the tzimtzum was not complete, existence could not come to be. This is Eitz Chaim asks, Arizal asks, since a kav came afterwards anyway, why didn't he just make a tzimtzum and just leave a kav? Why does it have to be complete concealment and then a kav? The answer is because then it would never be the intensity that the kav would still retain, because it still had something, would be too powerful for the... So like a student, the teacher is so brilliant, he has to be silent before he speaks. If he just says, you know what, okay, instead of me just pouring it on, I'm just going to, the flow will just become a small little flow, too strong. So you need complete concealment, complete silence, an existence independent reality can emerge, and now you can begin to spoon feed it, basically. A stream of consciousness can enter, then the containers expand until they can receive even before the tzimtzum. So I'm not saying you can't relate to before the tzimtzum, but I think the only way to do it is through Yediyas Hashlili. You have to look at it, what would be a reality that's not like our reality? That's the way to do it. If I had no ego, if I had no sense of self, what would it be like? It's hard to imagine that, right? You want to understand it with being a sense of self. That's the problem. That's why Bittul Metzias is not so easy to get to. It means it's a contradiction of terms. That's the whole thing. It's like same thing. Like I just apply it to reality. Love. People want love. They treat it like it's a commodity. They want to control love. They want to own it. They don't want to be hurt by it. They want to. I control. But love by nature, healthy love, is giving up, is surrender. You can't own it. Just like you can't own truth. It's when you submit, it emerges. People don't want that. They want to have it on my terms. Just like they own a house and a car, they want to own love. You can't own it. You can't own forces that are real, basically. The only way the only way you get them is through emergence and through allowing it to emerge. Avram came to this conclusion. Avram, through a process of elimination, realized Avodah Zarah, the idols of his father, for a complete baloney. So he went out to look. That's what it says. He went to look. What do? You start looking. We look in the sky, nature, sun, the moon. Then he saw the sun sets. So they just realized the sun is just a bigger part of the world. It's also part of reality. What did he come to? What was his final? How did he get to God? Right. He came to realize that God is not. I'm not going to find God. God's going to find me if I stop looking, so to speak. He had to basically say, stop being me, and then a reality will emerge. And that's exactly what happened. So he began through first looking for something on his terms, then realizing it's not on my terms. To put it in simple English, the part cannot define the whole defines the part. If the part defines the whole, then the whole is just another extension of the part. You follow what I'm saying? So if God is God, God defines us, not we define God. That's the difference between God. We're created in God's image, not God's created in our image. All of Avodah Zarah, on a real literal sense, and even the subtle form of Avodah Zarah that we all employ, is we create a God in our image. Start imagining God in your terms. Now, there's nothing wrong with that if you immediately negate it. That's why Mamala Kalaman is not enough. That's why you say, okay, God has wisdom, but not the wisdom that we have. You have to come to that second step, or else you create God becomes just a bigger you, which is, of course, defeats the whole purpose. This is like Mamala Kalaman would be the God within existence, Elokim. But you don't say Elokim, you say Hashem hu Elokim. You don't say Elokim hu Hashem. Havaya, the transcendent, is one with. So hu mekayim shalelim ve'ena elam mekayimai. It says less man the tough is bay. Who tough is bukula? What's the expression? Less man. Now, if you remember, he said less machshava tfisa beklal, thought cannot grasp him, but usa deliba can, because Rus Liba is going away from you. It's your desire for him. That's why you can grasp him, not because you suddenly are you found a trick. It's not like, I found the back way in, because you're no longer you. That's why. Wow. You give yourself so you can then grasp him. It's the classic. I remember, I don't know if this example works for you. For me, it always worked. I don't know, like quantum always, Remember as a kid, I used to love to break open thermometers to get the mercury.
Oh. That was the beginning of the end, huh?
Right, no.
What'd you say?
It may have caused brain damage. I don't know. No. I did not swallow it. That's not the point. It's destructive. No, but I know we like the property of mercury that you can't touch it. And to me, mercury was an example of you want to see my face and not live. You want to grab it, forget about it. The only way to grab mercury is by letting go. And then I saw an interesting example for it, by the way, the silkworm. You ever hear how the people pick, how the silkworm, the silk that comes from a worm, not synthetic. There's the major art of a silkworm is restraint, because the tendency is you want to pull it out from the worm. There's a whole thing. So you have to. It's all about subtlety. It's a perfect example of letting go. That's when it gets released, and that's where it's an art. It's like like when you want to untangle wires. What's your inclination? And then it gets worse. The ability to. I read it's a whole art. How the masters in Africa, whatever, the silkworm. It's like China. It's like they don't pull it. They like touch it, and they just have that touch that allows it to. It gives to you by touching it. If you pull a bit, it tears, and you destroy it. It's like interesting. It's like mati v'lei mati, whatever. My point is examples, real examples. No, you'll find this, by the way, in any real good, very subtle and refined arts. There's that restraint that's necessary. Even I'm sure an artist has that. It's not about it's about just enough and not more than necessary. Like ice skating, you're just on the ice. You go too deep in, you're out.
It's being what they call in the flow.
Yeah, absolutely. As a writer, I can tell you right now, it's in the zone, which you can't always initiate. It's when you don't feel you're there, and it just flows. That's when it's a gift. And as soon as you think about it, you lose it.
If you're in the zone again, you give it a second.
You have to really not know that you're hungry. You can't say, "Oh, I know I'm not hungry. I'm hungry." Right.
It's complete darkness, complete black hole.
The Rishima. The Rishima is a leftover, because in Kedusha or just in godliness, there's no complete. But there's no consciousness in the Rishima. That's the thing. The Rishima is just simply a concealed. It's concealed. It's a concealed leftover of the Oisius that were there before. The example, Chassidus gives 4 examples for it, the Mittler Rebbe, but the general example, the best example is this. The teacher falls silent in order to transmit something new. So with us, all you see is silence. But when God falls silent, there's still something remains there from the letters that he envisioned. Like the letters that he envisioned that he's going to communicate is there, but they're not revealed in any way. No one can see them.
He chose to make it like that. He didn't have
Right.
to make it like that.
Oh yes, of course he could have made a complete. The Tzimtzum could have been complete void, but he didn't want a complete void.
But don't we have to go through that to the Rishima? Isn't that
No, but you need the kav to reawaken the Rishima. The Rishima is a dead. The Rishima, think of it, the Rishima like a black hole, a real.
When you connect the Kav to the end, won't that? Doesn't the Rishima then come alive, so to speak?
The Rishima come alive before the kav goes to the end. The Rishima comes alive as soon as the kav enters. The action starts.
Isn't that where the Kav starts?
The kav interacts with the Rishima. That's how Kalim emerge.
Oh, it doesn't start with the Kav?
It does start with the kav.
But the Kav starts at the Rishima?
I'll explain. Give me a second. I mean, he's not here. He said it a little. He discussed this earlier chapters. It works something like this. Something like this. Remember, God can do anything again. So we're not talking about what's possible. We're talking about what is. If there was no Rishimu, the problem we'd have is we'd basically not be able to connect our Kalim to godliness. We'd be able to connect our Neshamas to godliness. So let's for argument speak like that. If the Tzimtzum is a complete black hole and there's nothing there, period, and then a Kav begins to shine in, the Kav is light. The Kav's light will create and do everything. But the Kalim will not have a way back. The Rishima is their key. Because the Rishima is a residue or impression left from the root of God wanting containers. So that, before the Tzimtzum is completely concealed, because it's submerged. Think of the Rishima as being like objects under the water. And the water is the Ein Sof Lifnei Tzimtzum. Now the water recedes. Now you have objects left.
Low tide.
Yeah. But you don't have actual physical objects. You have things that don't have any revelation. They're just there. It's like letters. But they're also but letters that are empty, like you see, as soon as you read letters on a page, they have meaning. It's hard to imagine letters that have no meaning. But imagine just invisible letters. That's what it would be like. Invisible letters. Those letters are critical because they will give shape to the containers. The energy will bring them alive. So it's like the body does not originate from the soul, but the soul brings the body to life and brings it into being. That Rishimu is like a soul enters once a seed is fertilized, right? The egg is fertilized by a seed. The soul God gives begins to give life to this fetus. If the soul didn't enter, it would just be expelled, and it would just be a dead seed. The soul begins, but there's also a body element here. Where's the body coming from? The soul doesn't create the body. The body comes from the Rishima, which is the Kayach HaGvul of God that He wants to have physical or a body, a container. I don't know if that helps or not. But the Chassidus is a length discussion of what.
But doesn't this have a... What was that?
What, I mean, what?
I was taking over. Where was the cow originated? I always thought it would start.
But doesn't this have a problem that if the Kalim are coming from the Rishim and the Shabbos are coming from the Kav, sort of duality in a sense?
No, because it does, but in Atzmos they both are rooted in the same Atzmos, that's why. And even before the Tzimtzum, they travel with these, they're interwoven. It's not like two separate paths. There's two separate forces. But these forces, one's shaped from the other, so they're constantly. If you would say the Er HaBligvul before the Tzimtzum, you'd say the Er HaBligvul has in it Er HaGvul. It's all within the Er HaBligvul. So there's a. That's why he just said here, it's all Pshittus and Isarvus. They're all Isarvus. So that gives power later for them to reunite.
But then wouldn't we say that the Kalim have a separate path to trace itself back up than the Neshama? Or do we say that they're going on, even though there's two different sources?
The answer, it's a great question. The answer is both. They have a separate path, but they also have a mutual path. It's like this. And then they become one. You understand? For example, I just gave you an example. If God wanted it this way, then you'd have like this. The Neshama would come into, and the body would come, and then when you're 20 years old, they come together. It doesn't work that way. From the second the body begins to develop, the soul is already a partner. So it's like Esav and Yaakov are twins, and they both work together until then they separate, and then they come back again. The bottom line is, in Atzmos everything is united. Then, when God says, "I want to have the power to illuminate, to radiate, and the power to withhold," that becomes the root of the Er and the root of Kalim. Kalim is the power to withhold. Sometimes it says the opposite, but let's just for argument's sake, that's the case. So you talk about, like he says, Sheresh HaKelim is higher than the Sheresh HaEr. You said that before.
Right.
However, that's when there's Shroshim. If you go to a place before there's a root, they all come from God's power, God's ability. When you say ability, the ability to shine, the ability to not shine is the same. But as it will come later, they won't know that. Even though in their DNA is embedded that unity. Right. So you have to think of it like this. Remember, the key thing you have to remember is that God wants a structure. If He didn't want a structure, we wouldn't have these problems. Since He wants a structure, there has to be a level where there is a distinction. That's why the Raved Sakayu's line that has brought so much Chassidus is so critical. Just like He has the power to illuminate Bligvul, He has the power to create Bligvul. Right? Why is that vital? Because He wants a structure. Our goal is not the Buddhist goal that there's no distinction. That's all light. There is a structure. So Eris and Kalim have to have a distinction because of the structure. That's not the problem. The problem is, how do you get to be to a place where there's no structure? And it should still be within the structure. That's really what you're asking. The duality is easy to resolve, because in Atzmos there's no duality. He has two forces, and they're both from his perspective. The question is, how can you have a structure that sees it as distinct, and Er and Keli are not the same, and they should still become one? That's the challenge of Ayin Beis. It's exactly the whole point. To say there's no duality and say that that ultimately we realize they all come from one source, that's not a big achievement. Right. That's Atzmos. Right. How can we, in a world where you and I, let's go further. We've got Aaron Kelly, you and I, we have different opinions. How can we go join together, and you remain individual, I remain individual, and we're joined as one with God? That's the challenge. That's the ultimate challenge of a real interface. Individuality is intact, and there's still total unity. Harmony within diversity is the challenge. That's why this is Hamshach. All of Chabad Chassidus. That's why Eris and Kalim. That's why you need everything. There's no way around this. We would love to be able to just go to a place of the light and everything is equal, but it's not that way. He wants us to go through the structure. That's why you have Ak, that creates Mesiris Nefesh or Amunah in the Neshama. And you have Tehir Ilah, that creates that the body is receptive to give itself to God. Everything needs its level. That's the whole point here. I mean, let's just bring it back to what we're learning here. The bottom line is, we don't just want transcendence, and we don't just want immanence. You want them to meet. So you need to have structure, that's total structure. Look, the beauty of Judaism, ultimately, in comparing it to any other discipline, and especially spiritual discipline, is that you have extreme opposites. The digduk kal, that a sheer matzah is this much and not that much, and complete unity with atzmus ein sof, that's l'mayla from every sheer. Explain that to somebody. Everyone could understand. Let's disregard the details and let's go to the light. You could also understand work only with the details and we don't really have a relationship with the light. But that both to extreme we don't relate to. That's Atzmus power. But for us, but the question here is not that Atzmus can do it. The question is, can we come to understand and relate to such a paradox? That's the challenge. For us to live a life that this is not a paradox anymore. That in a small detail, you have the whole etzem. So technology actually is an excellent example for today, because we know that today, in the hologram example, that in one microcosm, you have the whole macrocosm. So conceptually, it's still possible. In Avodah, the seichel is not a problem. Seichel we can relate to such paradox today. That it could be a detail. One dot. Look at the human body. One mutant cell will wreak havoc in a body with 75 trillion cells. So we know the detail is not a matter of size. But the problem is in Avodah is the problem. You and I have different opinions. We may not agree. We may have self-interest. How do we create unity there? So Avodah is the problem, not the seichel. Seichel, we can understand these ideas. Because remember, the ultimate goal is not just that. The ultimate goal is not just how Al Pi Seichel, a small shear that the God says specifically on Shabbos I want you to do this, and not on Sunday, and that connects to Atzmus that's higher than time and space. Seichel, you can understand it because he's beyond time and space, and it's beyond time and space. We all can relate to that. I mean, it needs a little thinking, but how do you, in Avodah, how does it work? Is it in my parameters or is it not in my parameters? See what I'm saying?
Why did you choose hologram as an example?
I used hologram because hologram is a perfect example of every detail has the whole thing in it.
A hologram has a macrocosm.
Yeah.
A hologram? A hologram is like a ephemeral...
No, but if you read about what hologram is, each part of it has the whole thing. If you break it up, you'll see you have a hologram of a picture of that bookcase.
Yes.
If you break the whole thing down, you have a billion little bookcases. Made up. Yep.
Well, what's your hologram image? What they have in these like amusement parks?
Well, no, what they have now in Denver Airport. They have a hologram. Instead of employing regular living people, they have holograms giving directions to the.
They call it a hologram?
Yeah.
But that is a hologram.
What does that do?
It's a human. You see a person, and she's giving directions. You see it, everything. But you can put your hand right through it.
That is a hologram.
It's in the air, and you can. Now they're working on where you.
They call it a hologram, but the root of the technology.
No, but then they're working on a hologram that where she's going to be able to respond to your questions. Meaning that she doesn't exist, but you're going to.
Okay, but a hologram.
Getting married.
But the root of a hologram technology.
That's not the hologram you're talking about.
No, that's what you're saying is a technology based on such a hologram. So they call it. But a hologram is one image that can be that is replicated. That is.
It has all the DNA in one. Every little cell has the. No?
But that's what a hologram is that you see.
That's the real definition of a hologram. I think what you're saying is a hologram's application. One of the applications is that you can project the same image.
That is a hologram.
But why is that? Why is that one detail? You see all the details. Why is that?
If you broke it up, you'd see it.
They're developing a hologram right now for the Havdil for the King of Music, and yes, and often thought the Havdil. You get it one day. They'll have a.
They say he's Jewish.
I know he is Jewish.
Okay, so don't say that.
So what's the Havdil?
Right. He's definitely Jewish. I bought the book.
He's Jewish?
He's Jewish.
Mother Jewish?
Presley was Jewish. His mother was his great mother on his mother's side, going back to Gladys.
Elvis really melted.
He carried a Magen David. He carried a Magen David, and his mother's grave on his mother's grave was Magen David on Matzeva. was a Magen David. It went back to one of a prominent Jewish family.
So the birth of all decadence came from a Jew. That's what the anti-Semites.
He was very generous, extremely.
No, he was definitely had a charisma that's beyond, no question about it.
His family the landlords of his family were the only Orthodox Jewish family in his community.
So do we get anything from Graceland? Do we get any royalties?
He's got some last week.
Huh?
He's got some last week.
Really?
Yeah, he's much bigger today than he was in his lifetime.
Thursday or Wednesday.
What is it? I think. What does his estate generate? Millions, hundreds of millions.
Thursday was his outside.
Let's continue here. Hey, 1 second. Are we learning Ayin Beis or what? Anyway, to go back, let me just say this. Let me say the following. At this stage, I would not try to make an exercise of trying to understand the essence of Sagnuzis. Let's just make that clear. It's the only thing that's really relevant to understand that in some way there is, on the highest levels of divine consciousness, there's an awareness of our consciousness. That's how I would put it. I haven't said it in those terms till now. Which means that we can have a relationship with the divine, because in his consciousness, where we can't even exist, because you can't go to Esesrius and Luzis and be. But in his consciousness, in some way, understands and relates to our consciousness, it's not like two separate worlds. Basically, that's what I would say. So Esesrius and Luzis, as he said clearly earlier, is not 10 hidden spheres as in hidden, and you're right, and all you need to do is find the key and you'll open the box and you'll see them. It's like quantum. It's higher than quantum, but in the sense, it's fundamentally it's a different reality. And he says there clearly, we only use it because it's a term to say, how did God make the spheres? Bottom line is, God's envisioning of the structure of existence. Is it in the Godhead, or is it just something that emerges later for so-called almost incidentally? Let's say God wants to have a Beis HaMikdash, so he threw gold into the world. But gold, you're not going to find gold in the Lifnei HaTzimtzum, so to speak. And the answer is no. He wants in the divine consciousness, which we can't understand.
But God had refers to Atzmus.
One second. I'm talking about divine consciousness. Atzmus is not consciousness. There's no consciousness. Atzmus b'chlal you can't talk about because there's no talk about it. Atzmus, you're talking about the essence of God's reality. How can we relate to it? We would be God if we would be there.
We still pray to it.
Hold on, you pray to it because you believe in it and you want it and you know from everything else that it's there.
But only negative.
No, in other words, Atzmus doesn't need a tzimtzum. If you talk about Atzmus is here right now in this room just like he's not here.
Exactly.
Who says he has to be here in our terms?
Exactly.
The whole point of a tzimtzum is because you want divine consciousness that we should relate to, but divine consciousness is a contradiction to human consciousness, so you need a tzimtzum. And saying that tzimtzum is only from an existential level. When you talk about God, the non-existential nature of God, non-existence is not a contradiction to existence. The fact that someone says, I can't see God, it's exactly the proof that that's the real God. If you saw him, it would be your reality. It wouldn't be his reality, it would be your reality. Matter of that's why the chiddush is that the non-seeable God will reveal himself to us. Because he wants to, and that's part of the kavanah. But he doesn't have to. As a matter of fact, left to his own recourse, seeing and not seeing him is the same thing. What difference does it make? The best example I always give for this, we do have a taste of it, is us. Listen to this. I'm just saying it's not really relevant right here, but I know this is I know that when I was asking these questions, I was very frustrated when I wasn't told the answers. So I'll tell you what I have to say about it. It goes like this. What does it feel like to exist? If someone asked you, I'm a Martian, I don't know what existence is. Or even if I'm a human being, tell me, what does it feel like to exist? That's what he said. That's a lahav, right? No. Descartes, right. That's nice, but that's not what Chassidus would answer. Some say, I eat, therefore I am. I eat chont, therefore I am. No. That's not what I asked. I didn't ask, how do we know we're here? I didn't ask that question. Or what? I'm asking, what does it feel like existence?
How does it feel like?
Exactly. There's no feeling. There's no sensation. Just like, what does it feel like to be healthy? If someone starts telling you what it feels like, there's a problem. Because it's not supposed to have a feeling. If someone says it feels like, how do it feels like? It feels like a lump in my throat. That's not good. Or, because it's not a sensation. Let's just define the key thing here is, you see, we are so addicted to sensations and senses. By us, it's there, I want to see it, I want to hear it, I want to taste it, touch or smell. However, if you really think about it, the most real things in life don't fit into sensations. That's what I'm talking about, existence. What does health feel like? It doesn't feel like anything. As a matter of fact, as soon as you feel something, you know there's something not right. There's something blocking or something whatever. What does existence feel like? It doesn't feel like anything. It doesn't feel like anything. You really cannot even communicate to somebody. If you didn't know existence from your sense, or the lack of sense, there's nothing I can tell you. You know what it is because you exist, that's why. I exist because I exist. That really would be what I would say, not because I think. Hold on. And here's an example for it. Like a yesh eya.
Yeah.
Hold on. But that's, 1 second, listen to this, listen.
In the Rabbi.
Exactly, 1 second. But we have a taste, I'm giving you a taste of what Atzmus would be like. But you'll realize right away that it's not Atzmus, but it's a sense of it. Here, another thing. Until the next sentence, I'm going to say something, but think of what was going on before I said the sentence. Listen to this. What is your left leg doing right now? Now you're thinking about it. What was it doing a second before you thought about it? Same thing. You weren't aware and didn't take away or drop from its reality.
And you know.
No, go ahead.
You want to? You can debate it as long as you like.
Beautiful example.
No. So you see that. Okay, that's the purest form of existence. It doesn't require a sensation. Who said sensation? Exactly. Who said consciousness, sensation, and proof? Exactly. So imagine now a reality called Atzmus. That's all the time that way, and is fundamentally that way. We were given a taste of it because Atzmus created us and He wanted us to give you a taste of what it's like.
What is that?
No. The two things. He says this earlier. The fact that we don't feel we have a source, and the fact that we don't sense our existence. If you really think we can exist without, you don't need a proof. You don't feel that you're an extension of your mother and father's umbilical cord. I'm here. That's it. I popped into the world and that's it. Your seichel tells you I came from someone, I'm dependent on others. But the reality sense that I'm here is like an absolute in your
non-awareness.
Yes, non-awareness and absolute.
Then I got a quick question for you. So why couldn't you say a yogi, true master yogi, who's sitting up in Nepal right now? He has obliterated all existence. He can
come to this point. He can come to this point. But God wanted a dir b'tachteinim. He wanted consciousness. But He wants consciousness. You see, the Swami or whatever his name is, he'll say the goal is to get away from consciousness, and the Torah says the goal is to go into consciousness and reconnect to beyond consciousness.
You
got it.
Did you just say a lack of awareness is the absolute highest level of
a reality? But he wants it in. But God wants it in the world of awareness.
Once you're aware of the physical world, the dira b'tachtonim, you're already at a secondary level. You're not that.
No. But He wants the higher level in tachtonim. That's what dira b'tachtonim is.
I want you to know in Zen Buddhism.
You heard what I just said?
Yes, He wants it.
But that's His desire. That He wants that higher awareness in the lower awareness.
So then, so that's His ultimate kavanah.
Yeah.
So once you say, therefore, since that is even higher than this other level of not being aware of existence.
Yeah.
So isn't that really even a better example of Atzmus? He doesn't want to just.
Or you could argue that because it's Nesava, the Tachtenim itself is part of the non-existence. That's the thing. For him, existence and non-existence are one. For us, it's two. See, this thing is a revelation for you that existence is no sensation at all. For God, existence and non-existence are equal. But for us, it's not equal. That's the thing. And the non-existential state of God wants to have that the existential state that thinks non-existence is a contradiction should be one with the non-existential. In an existential way, yeah. Think about it. Can we continue on? Okay.
So getting back to your beautiful analogy of the left leg, because everybody has that when you said now that you're thinking about it, it existed right before there. So it was in the total existence. You just said something that God wanted the existence to be that the ultimate existence was to be aware of non-existence and existence at the same time.
Let's put it this way: you can define the non-existential state of God. This state that I gave an example, that your left foot is there, you're not feeling it. You could say that's reality. Okay, fine. And you could say that's the goal, is to reach a place of that total lack of consciousness, where there's no more me and you. It's just a state of being. Okay. Yeah, but that's not the kavanah. The kavanah is that the non-existential state of God is even beyond non-existence of the left leg before you're thinking about it. The non-existential state is even beyond that, and therefore that state wants to have consciousness and lack of consciousness all in one.
It wasn't there, no there, not there.
That's the thing. That's the beauty of it. That's where Buddhism diverges from Judaism.
By the way, Buddhism does have pictures going back into the field after achieving illumination. They start off with
No, there's certain elements of that, yeah, but they don't have digdukal of divrei sofrim. But they don't have a digdukal of divrei sofrim. They're not eating matzah, leaning on the side
No.
and looking for every crumb of crumbs. They don't have obsession with details. Let's put it this way.
You do or don't?
They don't.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's the key here. You see, this is my correspondence I had with.
God is in the details.
One second. This is the
Who came up with that line? God is in the details.
It's Jews. Moses.
You said that the other day.
Moshe Rabbeinu probably.
He said, I think you said the other day, that be from and spiritual at the same time.
Absolutely,
And
that's the
from
key.
Usually the less spiritual.
The Rebbe Rashab of all the Rabbeim, they said, was the most mahadir in details. And you could see why, because he was also the highest in this where he went. I mean, the highest. I mean, relatively speaking. The point I want to make, one second, this is a key thing. I had a correspondence with Leonard Cohen about this, about the difference in Buddhism and so on. Yeah. I'll show you this correspondence. It's a 30-page correspondence. Exactly about this. The bittul, you see, this is the key. We have like this. We have yesh, bittul hayesh, bittul mitzias. Okay. And that's where you think it stops. It doesn't stop there. It stops when you bring the bittul mitzias back into the yesh and back into all the way down. If the bittul is the goal, and that's where you end up. After the yesh is bottle. I'm not talking about not having yesh. Your yesh and the bottle, that would be the key difference between Far Eastern disciplines. Bittul is the ultimate goal, and by us, bittul is not the ultimate goal. The yesh should be bottle is the ultimate. In other words, bring that bittul, because to reach bittul mitzias is reach going back to Atzmus. So what'd you gain? You got back to where you started. Atzmus doesn't need, Atzmus is already bottled before. The goal is, that's the Ramban. The Rambam says the ultimate is neshamas. The Ramban says no, tchis hameis, the ultimate, this world. The yesh hanivra becomes one with the yesh amiti. And that's why it's an ultimate paradox. And that's because bittul is not a stira to mitzias, and that's only an atzmus that's higher than a bittul.
Existence and non-existence.
Okay, so the paradox is you have to go through bittul, because there's no bittul, you're not going anywhere.
That's why we say bittul yijot. He goes. Through bittul you go.
Okay. So in other words, so that's why we'll sometimes say iskafia has stronger power than ishapcha. Even though ishapcha is a transformation. Because there's something about, because iskafia is still recognizing there's a yesh, there's something about that. That's why in Hayom he says that we will, how do you say bank? We'll long for the Aveda and Golis when Mashiach comes, because that resistance will not be there. Right, we will. In other words, that element of it. It's the ultimate paradox, and it is distinguishable. I've read a lot of the Buddha stuff in the Zen. They don't go that far, 100% not. By them, you see, they don't care about Bereshis Bara Lakim Shema V'Saretz. We need, by us, we have proved God. They have no problem for existence is an illusion. They have no because they don't have a Torah that tells them existence is real. So what do they care of going? If we didn't know that either, so who needs existence? Let's get out of it. Existence is a distraction. We could argue that. Like the Meraglim in a way said that. But God told us there is an existence. That's the problem. That causes a whole new... right. So that forces us to come to understand that the Yesh Amiti is higher than Oyer. Bottom line is by them ultimately Oyer, and by us it's Kalim.
Because Bereshit bore Elohim.
Right.
He made Elohim, but he made the Kalim first, and that was hard.
The paradox gets very fascinating because at the end of the day, you need the complete fusion of both consciousness and not consciousness. Because here's the strange twist. You think which one reveals more of non-consciousness, Oyer or Keli? So initially everyone would say because is ayin,
Right.
bittul. But the keli is much more because when you don't think of the left leg, is far deeper than because is bottle in nature, but does not have an element of no consciousness at all. It's a consciousness of bittul. And the lack of the non-existential nature of our existence is real bittul. The real bittul, because it doesn't even feel it. See, is a sensation. It's a state of it's existential. The lack of sensing your foot is completely non-existential. So in a strange way, the fact that the yesh knows that it cannot have real substance of its own, because it doesn't have any value of its own, reveals a deeper dimension of reality than because will say, I'm bottled completely to my source, but our source is real. It's a real.
That's why women are superior to men.
Or will say that.
Women are
And that's the existential side of God's presence. And a keli will reveal to you the non-existential side of God's presence. But that goof also is revealed to the Okay.
Last thing in creation, women are higher than men.
100%. And I'll go a step further.
No, Shabbos then is the last day of creation.
No, I'll tell you one more thing that's very important. Another thing that's critical here is... what was I going to say? No, the air and the keli is non-existential.
No, but you said about the goof, because the lack of Giluim shows that that's
talking about how women are higher.
That's he said that. I didn't say that. I was not talking about that. Anyway, I was going to say something else in that context. We'll come back to
You
it.
don't agree with that statement?
It's connected to it, but it's yeah. But the paradox goes back again because that itself is revealed through the air. So it goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I don't feel now. Let's continue on here. So the root of the epinemy of the immanent energy is in Esesphere. I'm saying all this to explain that we can't. That the Ayin Sof Lifnei Tzimtzum is divine consciousness on divine terms, and there's no room for anything else. But that divine consciousness, however you understand it, arose the Shir Atzmei, some ways envisioning the reality of our consciousness, which is 10 spheres. That's all. That's what he's saying here. And through the tzimtzum, the concealment emerges the distinct spheres, separate. Chochma separate, Bina is distinct, and so on. So how the dynamics work in the context of what I just said would work like this. Atzmos, fine. Divine consciousness is infinite possibilities, beyond spheres. Within that, the power of God's desire and will to have 10 spheres is there. Again, I'm not talking about what kind of form. It's definitely not in any shape and form that we can do anything with. But it's in there. Just like there's divine consciousness looking at what he wants in existence. Then comes another state of divine force comes into play. It's called the divine concealment. He's going to conceal this whole divine consciousness. And now will emerge a kav, which will reveal those 10 spheres that arose in the infinite divine consciousnesses that wanted 10 spheres. That's the dynamics of it. The Rishima is basically, it doesn't say it here, but it's a residue, a impression that's left from the envisioning of the containers that will come later. That's all that's practical. It's not really, but it's not concealed. We're talking about this, but that's hidden. We're talking about, as point of view of consciousness revealed, there needs a tzimtzum. The tzimtzum conceals. The kav is a revealing force. So the kav comes from the consciousness, the divine consciousness over the tzimtzum, and now it's only giving you the 10 spheres. Within it is embedded everything else, but it's makif and so on. We're not talking about that. So that's that. The kav interacts with the rishim, and that's how kalim emerge.
But according to what you just said a minute ago, the real action is in the rishima. Because if you say that, if you say that the kalim source is in the rishima, and ultimately the ultimate expression of existence and non-existence is really the biggest chiddush is in the kalim, so understanding the rishima is really where it's at.
I can't say it's where it's at because every component plays its role. Without the catalyst called the kav, the Rishima remain dormant.
Yes, but ultimately this is where the biggest hit is.
Yeah, fine, in the big picture, but the bottom line is in the process. For example, Eitz Chaim doesn't even mention Rishima. But it's mentioned in other places of the Arizal from other places. Then,
Ayin Beis,
yeah, they come together. No, Rishima is definitely part of the picture. So,
he specifically will mention it?
yeah. No, even in one mimer I saw that Rishima is not mentioned Eitz Chaim, but it's hinted to. When you look other places, you understand where it fits. The point I'm trying to make is that right now, everybody's talking about consciousness, and consciousness is air. Remember, Kalim have no consciousness. Kalim are just entities. The Kav and the Ur are the instruments of creation. Rishima is just a force. It's like a force field. Then he goes on. And this is a summary of all the chapters. This is the meaning of the Kav. The ray of light, that's the energy that transmits after the tzimtzum, is a kava osim in a kudus. It's a line that's made out of points. V'hainu asfiras pratis, which means the points of the specific spheres. Remember, he spoke about the 3 levels. Then 10 hidden spheres are nakuda. The kav brings the nakudis into tangible reality, distinct, and then they're manifest in containers.
That's why it's called Nikudi first, right?
Later. Nevertheless, even the way they're in the kav, in the line, in the ray of light, they're still blima, without substance, and a form of shapelessness, relatively speaking. That's level 3. Only when they manifest in the containers, the spheres, the Atzilus, of the 10 spheres of Atzilus, that's where they become actual substance. All this was said earlier at length. He's summing up. Because now he's going to the Kalim. Because the Kalim are a distinct personality and identity. So through the containers, when the energy manifests in the containers, also the energies become substantial. And they are distinguished in a hierarchy of higher and lower. B'mailosan, in their quality. That means in their state of intensity and diminishment of their energy and revelation. Also in their actual level. Chochma is fundamentally higher level, be'etzem. Adregosa legabe bina compared to bina. V'chein hameichin legabe midas, the same intellect compared to the emotions. This is literally a summary of tens and tens of chapters. The Rebbe Rashab is doing the summary.
Can you put this up earlier than the other ones? I'd love to be able to refer to this.
Li is the b'sharshin hein l'hoyer, and it goes back to the root. Why is this the case? Because in their root, hein l'hoyer b'chinas midah ugvul. Because in their root, the purpose of this energy is to radiate, is to emanate. In midah with measurement and gvul and parameters. So what he just said was that still talking about the pnimi. That the root of the pnimi, its first root is the 10 hidden spheres. Its purpose is to ultimately radiate in the parameters. But the way they are before the tzimtzum, they're complete shapelessness, completely invisible. Through the tzimtzum they emerge, but they're still in a form of relative pshittus, and then when they manifest in containers, which are real substance, they assume the substance of the containers, and therefore they become real distinct entities, both, and they have a real hierarchy, higher and lower. All this does not exist lifnei tzimtzum, and even in the kav doesn't have this level of hierarchy. And hierarchy means both in the intensity of energy and in their distinct personalities. And it's all because they all rooted in the midah gvul. And nevertheless, being that their energy, they're still in a form of pshittus. He said this earlier also. Which means, B'emtzon, in the middle level. The first level, as the Sri Sangha is, they're completely beyond any definition. In the middle level, the Kav reveals in them their pshittis. This is the interface at work. So that even when they're in the Kalim, they still retain the transcendent dimension from the Kav, which comes from the transcendence of the 10 hidden spheres. U'b'seifim, that's B'emtzon, B'seifim, in their final third level, the Hayom Beis B'kelim, when they manifest in containers, that Tzilis, of Atzilis, Boim B'chinas Mitzias Dor, B'chinas Hakbala V'Yischalkus. That's where they come in a form of substance and define differentiation, right? That means there is revealed their parameters. So essentially what he just said here is a critical line that he said all the way back then when he spoke about the Kav. So we have here the interface all on the level of immanence. So, let me just explain this in simple English, you understand. The Torah says that you're supposed to do a mitzvah. Let's say on Shabbos, you're supposed to eat. Whether it's cholent or not. Nevertheless, you're supposed to eat in a refined way, right? The Baal Shem Tov showed his student someone that was an ox in a strimel. An ox wearing a strimel eating cholent or whatever he was doing on Shabbos. So the question is, how do you keep this balance? God, like the Meraglim, wanted to stay in the Midbar because Eretz Echel Sheshva, the land consumes its inhabitants. If you remain a shepherd, like the Ovis, you don't fulfill the purpose. He wants us to go into the world and become part of the world. So how do you keep the balance? Are you supposed to go in, or are you supposed to stay out? The answer is you're supposed to go in, but always remain above. Well, like the Kusilep, the story where he was doing business, his calculations. Oops, the whole thing moved. No, it's not. It's off center. Okay. So, there's a famous story. He was doing his calculations. And the bottom he wrote Ein Milvada. Asked the question, why didn't, if God is nothing but God, he should have written on every month. January, Tishrei, Cheshvan, Kislev, every line should have said Ein Milvada. The Rebbe asked this question. The answer given, then he's not a businessman. Then he should go to a kolo. The businessman is that he knows how to make his calculations, but when it comes to the bottom line, he knows where it's at. So he knows in the world of numbers, he knows what the numbers are. And yet, he understands. So Yosef, the Ovis, the forefathers, patriarchs were shepherds. But they say Yosef is a higher level, because he's the first accountant, the first Jewish accountant. It says by Potiphar, he married the cheshbon in it. He made the cheshbonos. And then he went into the real business. The grain, he made Egypt into a superpower. He was definitely dealing with business. And yet he remembered Eglah Aruf, he remembered what he learned. And he remained there Markova, even in Biyah. Chassidus says. The Ovis, Chesed Gvur Teferes of Atzilus. Yosef was Yesod, which went into Malchus, which went into Beriah, Mitzrayim. In Erev Haaretz, he retained his bittul, which is explained in Chassidus like the Milo of Mincha, from Seder Hayom. Why was Eliyahu answered by Zman of Mincha? That's why you have to be careful. Mincha is a seemingly Shema, it's the shortest prayer, because it's the middle of the day. Morning and at night, you're ready at the end of the day. It's here, middle of work, you rip yourself away while you're immersed in work. I remember the Rebbe once spoke to the Machne Yisrael Development Fund. He said to them an unbelievable business thought. He said, business is all about focus. He says, if you tear away and make a share in the middle of your day, don't think it's going to weaken you, but it's going to make it stronger, because it means that you're able to focus, and when you go back, you'll have focus in where you are there. It means that you have the ability to, that's what the Rebbe said. So it's about focus. And you're able to create, in other words, discipline, controlling your focus. It's interesting. Anyway, the point I'm saying here is, it's very relevant to this. I'm just explaining it on a practical level. It says, Al Kocha Chatachai. The Neshama doesn't want to come down below. It has to be forced to come down. And it says this has to constantly be told. The Neshama, even while it's down here, never wants to stay here. That's why we always have angst. We have restlessness. We always remain a flame that's flickering. So you say, 1 second. the Neshama doesn't want to come initially, fine. God doesn't want it to, it's ruchnis. Why should it want to come to a physical world? The answer is good. God commands you to. So it has bittul. So now that you're here, at least be at peace. So remember the Rebbe once said, Chaz v'shalom. If it becomes at peace, we're lost. We're doomed. Because then the neshama will become like the guf and there'll be complacency. The neshama has to stay here and not want to be here. That wakes you up all the time. It causes you to be restless. It causes you not be satisfied. So the bittul is there, it comes because it's told this is where the mitzvahs are and this is the kavanah, but it has to retain. That's what I mean. You eat shalom on Shabbos, fine, but cry a little why you have to eat shalom and not learn chassidus. Instead, don't get too comfortable with Eilam Hazar just because it's dir v'tachtenim. That's the point. So it's a paradox. The purpose is here. So the Meraglim had a point. The problem was they wanted to stay there. Go into Eretz Yisrael and complain that it's Eretz Echal Shishveh, but you got to go. That's the key. That's what he's saying here. So the Eiris come into the Kelim. But they still they have to retain their transcendent element. And that's what the Kav reminds them. That's why you have this mid-level. The Kav reminds the Eir, we're still connected to a source. Don't get too comfortable in the Kelim. On the other hand, God wants the Kelim. So you have an Eir that manifests in containers. So Eir, therefore, has dual properties. One, it has within it shape and form in a subtle way. And it will enter in containers, because that's the kavanah, but it retains transcendent nature. When I say transcendent, I just want to qualify, I don't mean makif here. We're talking about transcendent within pnimi, meaning retains its quality, that it's restless, that it wants more. An animal grazing in the field does not have this type of inside it. The Alter Friedrich Rebbe said, a behemoth never saw heaven. It walks on all four. We look into heaven, sumar menechem, raise our eyes, so we want to know what's going on. Even on a physical level, we spend billions of dollars on NASA just to figure out what's going on in the stars. Is there other life out there? Curiosity. Animals live in the same habitat as they lived 500 years ago. We want new homes, better cars, better fax machines, better telephones, everything. Because we have a flickering soul that is active and it wants more. The Eir is connected to Kav, to Pshittas. It has an element of substanceless, and it's not satisfied with substance. But it's here, and it fits into substance. So that's the paradox of Eir. This is Eir Pnimi, what I just described. I just wanted to apply it into a practical way, these two elements. So you see, he says on one hand, they're still Pshittas. And that's what comes from the Kav, because the Kav is Megala B'chinas HaPshittas Shebehem. Their lack of shape and form. And then there's the way they're in the containers, that's Mizgala B'chinas HaKabbalah Shalahem. That reveals the definition within them. To put it more simple, another way of putting it is, can we get along while retaining our energy? So you could say, yeah, we can get along. You know what? If all of us don't let our personalities shine. So we all basically bottle, like Kalim, and then we get along. But can you let your Eir shine and still get along? The answer is yeah, because Eir be'etzem is pshittus. It has an element of, remember he spoke about Hatva Geir Agvura with Shammai and Hillel, because it still retains that. But then nevertheless, when it comes into a particular personality, it is an individual. Bottom line is that you have here individuality and also commonality. However, it's all commensurate to Pnimi. It's not true transcendence. It's all within the world of Pnimius. The same thing is also what the Pnimi does. It creates, what did you call it? Differentiation. I like that. Be'elamis in the world. Just like he said, there's a difference in Chachma and Bina. And Moichan and Midas, also in the world, there's a distinction that the 10 spheres of Atzilus are not like the 10 spheres that are higher than Atzilus. V'chein, ha'eshes spheres the Bria l'gaba Atzilus. And the same thing, the 10 spheres of Bria are not like the 10, what's going on in Atzilus. That's Pnimi. Now comes the second half. However, the transcendent energy, its root is the infinite light, that it's only a revelation, an expression of its source. Its inyan, its role is not to radiate and illuminate the world. simply being a revelation, its role is to be divine consciousness. To reveal and express from the essence. The revelation is similar to the source. It's not focusing on the structure of existence. It's focusing on the revelation of what God wants, on the source. And that's why it's called Ein Seif. Remember, Eir is Ein Seif, not Eir Shel Ein Seif. The Eir itself is Ein Seif. That's a state of Pshittus, Mamish, or B'chinas Bligvul. So, shapelessness and infinity. Remember, he used before by essence sphere Sagnuz is also Pshittus. But that's the Pshittus of Pnimi, of immanent energy. Now it's Bligvul. Now 1 second. And that's why in the essence of this energy, from the perspective, mitzad, due to its shapelessness, it's not even capable, it's not possible, any name is not applicable to it. Literally every chapter he's summing up here. The Spashas, the extension of this energy, there, Shaykh Sham Shem Rotzen. The name desire is possible. Because Rotzen is already a lower level, but it is also, its role is revealing and expressing the source.
It's called an air.
He said before, Etzema air is Pashtus air. It's air, yeah, of course it's air. 1 second. And when it's in a state of desire, it's at least in a form of makif, encompassing, transcending the worlds. But it has no differentiation. It doesn't have gradations and hierarchy. This is literally a summary of everything. Like desire that affects the faculties and the organs equally from leg to head. From beregel in the leg, that's like the head. The same thing, the transcendent is in all the worlds equally. And we explained the nevertheless, being a makif, it still has a relationship with the pnimi. Shaykhus, some connection. That's why we have within it general makifim, general encompassing transcendent energies, and specific ones. The general makifim is the level of Tehiri law and Tiratata, the higher shining and the lower shining, or the higher purity and the lower purity. The Tehiri law is Tehiri law is the great sphere that precedes the kav, the line. Shesev of Klal Shishtalshu is the kav that surrounds and encompasses the whole structure, that the kav of the kav. So the kav goes into existence and surrounds it all. The the lower purity, is the level of the primordial or primal thought. That also surrounds and encompasses the whole structure, but it's after the tzimtzum. That's ak, adam kadman. And the specific makifim are the crowns of each in the world. Kesed Atzilus, the crown of Atzilus. Shehu harotzen lahaitz Atzilus. That's the desire to emanate Atzilus. V'kesed de Bria harotzen livrei. And the Kesed of Bria is the desire to create the world of Bria, to create. What do you need to have, and why we need specific makifim, specific transcendent forces, desires. Because in the general makif, everything there is equal from asiyah to like atzilus. The yesh lemer sheshavim sham gam b'chinas ha'er v'agili. We can say that because we can say that they're equal there also in their revelation, their light and their revelation, their energy and their revelation. And in general, they're not in any distinct type of entities where you can distinguish to see any differentiation between them. So even their Eir and Gili is also the equal. Not just that their entities are, they're distinct entities, that they don't see distinction, but even the energy there is equal. Because you could say there's no distinct entities, but the energy is different. Even the energy is similar. l'chol elam befrat. This is a critical component. I just realized this. This is a critical component because if you remember, I said before. Yes. So what's the difference between transcendence from the immanent energy and transcendence from transcendent energy? If air retains pshitus, right? Even air in the kelim, the immanent retains a certain element of substanceless. So what distinguishes that from the pshitus, so-called, of the transcendent energy? So I would say, based on what he just said here, because it's not in the transcendent energy, the energy there is equal. In the kelim, even though the energy retains pshitas, but there's different energy in chesed and in gvura and in chochmah and bina. Which means, going back to my example before, there's more individuality. So it's true, we can get along because we don't just focus on our bodies and our containers, but we also have an energy that's transcendent. But you're still Shammai and this is still Hillel.
The Ksarim are really more.
But Ksarim, there's no difference between Shammai and Hillel there. That's another thing. No, but there's no difference. So there's no difference between Chesed and Gvura. Not in the energy level and not in the container level. Not in the identity level. So there's a far greater unity, but the different lacking there is unity. So in other words, Amunah Pshuta, for example, of Shammai and Hillel is equal. The Kelim, the Seichel, this one thinks like Chesed, this one thinks like Gvura, that only is an Er Pnimi. But since Er Pnimi has an element of Bittel, because it's Er, so they'll get along. In other words, he'll state Shammai, he'll say Asr, he'll say Mutter. They'll disagree, but they'll go out to dinner afterwards. In other words, they have unity among them. But the unity of because they're still Or, because they're not consumed by their Kelim. They're not.
Is it still Or Pnimi or
Yeah, Or Pnimi, because of Or Pnimi.
You also use that with an Or.
And even one second, but even Or Pnimi, that's why when they go back to their teacher, sometimes Shammai can even come to the conclusion of Hillel. Because even Or still has an element of bittul in it. However, it's a bittul within the parameters of Chesed and Gvura. Bittul of Makif here, like he said, introduces Mesiras Nefesh, Amunah Pshuta. That's a whole different level. The Amunah Pshuta of Shammai and Hillel is not commensurate to their Chesed and Gvura. It doesn't make a difference.
He did say greater person have a greater teacher in terms of Makif before.
That's Kesser of Atzilus. I was comparing it to Makif of the general Makif. Then there's a transcendent. 1 second, we'll get to that. That's another level. Now he's talking about Kesser. I was talking about comparing it to the Kesser of right, the first two. Right. I just wanted to distinguish, and that's maybe why he adds that Eir Shlema, also the Eir is equal there. Remember, we spoke about Shammai and Hillel. We said the Eir also has Chesed and Gvura. When they heard Shmaya Vavtalion teach, the Eir also has Chesed and Gvura, except he couldn't distinguish it. And here, the Eir does not have Chesed and Gvura. In Ak, they're all equalized, relatively speaking again.
They're not.
Here in the Makif, they're not. The Makif element of it, yeah. That's why we need to have a distinct desire for each specific world. And another reason why you need it is because the Ratzon Kloli, the overall desire, is concealed. It's only a determination. It's only a resolution. And the individual desires are a specific desire for each. And this is the inyan of the crown of Atzilus, that's the revealed desire to emanate Atzilus. Another reason, and another reason, the final reason he gave there, was Ak is the level of Ein Sof. It's still Ein Sof. It's still a taste of the infinite. That's why in order to bring into being the 10 spheres, you need to have a distinct individual desire. And now these makifim, these transcendent forces affect the world. The Igel HaGadol Tehiri gives the power of bittul in the containers. And when there'll be the revelation of the great sphere, the physical body will be divine. He said that. What did he say there? What did he say there?
It's divine, but it's Gilead.
Then there we said b'machal. Yeah, the end of chapter. That's end of chapter 62. I'm going to mark up which chapters this is summarizing. It's very, really, this is very useful.
It is a Gashmi is a Lakost in it, but it's Atzmi. It's not the Gilead. It's not the revelation. It's not Gilead, right? Last love is going to be Gilead.
Yeah, you can't call a body a lakus today. You could say it comes from there, but in no way is it. The body doesn't necessarily follow. There, the body will be revealing, manifesting. Look at the end of chapter 50.
You explain one thing because there's no Gilead. That's the ultimate.
Yeah. It's end of chapter 62. He says it. It's like neshama nezenis min haguf. That would be the idea. Yeah. Okay. That's Tirila. Now, ubezed b'chol kema da'ak lefanecha tishtachve. Hine kol nevram aklun bak b'teim le'en say baruch hu. So, what is the effect of ak in general? The bezed b'chol kema lefanecha, that the entire structure which stands within ak bows before you, prostrates. That's how all the creatures which are encompassed in ak are bottled to Ein-Sof. P'chinas pnimius ak, from the inner dimension of ak, nimshach ha'ara b'neshamas Yisrael. He did. He said all this. Yeah. Is the reflection in the souls of Israel? Hu akeich the Mesiras Nefesh al kiddush Hashem shebekol echad ve'echad. That's the power of Mesiras Nefesh on sanctify God's name. That's within each person. But not the kalim, not the bittul that the kalim have to go cooperate with that. And also what the soul is called kala, bride, klesa nefesh, her ability to expire. What? No. Avos Soteris is what comes from Atzilus. 1 second, you'll see. And also the bittul of preceding Nasal and Nishma, which is like the bittul to the Baal Haratzin, to the one who desires it all. Klesa nefesh is a form of being able to go out of your own self.
Where's the bittul if they were threatened by a mountain at that point?
It's all about abundance of love.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
One second. And from Kesed Atzilas, the impact is Ubchinis Ava Mishateres V'rusa Deliba, is the hidden love and the desire in the heart. Ubchinis Heidhudei Tshuva Shenefel Pisem, and the spontaneous thoughts of Tshuva that fall into us, Pisem, spontaneously, automatically, or Pisem, spontaneously is the right word. V'gam Mashal Razal Akol Beisor Shechin Tashari, and also what Razal say that on 10 people the Shechina rests. I explained the difference. Ak, the impact of Ak, remember, is an equalizer. The impact of Atzilus is specifically on Atzilus. Being that all neshamas come from Atzilus, Atzilus has a more visible impact and a more distinguishable one in levels. Ru'usa Delib Ava Mesuteres can be different from one person to the next. The Amunah Pshuta and the Mesiras Nefesh and Kiddush Hashem, or Klesa Nefesh, is an equalizer. All souls have that natural the gravitation to the divine. Ava Mesuteres, like tshuva, thoughts of tshuva, already have an impact in some type of avodah in you. It's still transcendence, but that would be the main distinction. I would also say Ak's effect is more passive. Atzilus' effect is more active. Klesa Nefesh doesn't mean you are actively expiring. It means that there's a force of Klesa Nefesh inside of a soul. And in certain situations it will emerge. That's what I would say is the key difference. Those are the main things that he says. Chapter 61. To go back to that chapter and read it slowly, because there he speaks about all the different things, the Kabbalah sale that it has.
The panemius of it, and it's sort of like not an equalizer when you say there's a panemius that goes to certain people and the panemius doesn't go to certain people in the world.
He says Primisak right here in the parentheses.
Yeah, I know. It's almost. It helps me not understand what an equalizer can be, because it's from ak. It's a makiv, and it's supposed to be an equalizer, yet the
Pnimis means it affects our existence, but it's an equalizing force. The Amunah Pshuta, when you say the pilot flame is alive in each soul, that's an ak impact. When you say Ava Misuteres is already a more visible and conscious impact.
On the line above where it says
Okay.
about 10 lines down from the top right there.
From where? Where?
Shame, is that shame cloud or sham cloud?
Which line?
Where the first word is sham cloud or shame cloud. Okay,
Shame, name. There's no name.
No name.
You can't give it any description.
No name. But then it says
This is because he explained earlier, there's Etzem Ha'er, Ispashtus Ha'er.
Right.
The Etzem Ha'er, there's no name at all. It's Ha'er. When the Ispashtus Ha'er, when the Ha'er extends, he spoke about in Lifnei Tzimtzum, there's Etzem Ha'er and Ispashtus Ha'er. Ispashtus already, you can say the expression of energy, as opposed to...
Before the Ispashtus,
there's no name. When you give it a name, the name you give it is Ratzon. Ratzon is already a state outside of the Etzem Ha'er, basically.
And then that's
when we say Oir Ein Sof, this is the Kabbalah says like this. The Yeinus Ilam and Pelach Harim and Rameh Mepano, he asked the question, why does it say Oir Ein Sof, not Oir Ein Tchila? He brought this back in chapter 59. What chapter was it? Yeah. And his answer is, because Atzmut, well, he gave two answers that Rabbi Rashav gave before. The two answers, he gives the answers because Atzmus is Ein Tchila. Oir is because it's referring to a level outside of Atzmus, which you can't call Ein Tchila, it doesn't have a beginning, it has a beginning, a source. But it's a source, he calls it Ratzon. The Alter Rebbe comes and says, we can't call it Ratzon because Ratzon is already an entity. So we call it Oir. So we use the Rameh to explain that it's something outside of the Etzem, but it's not Ratzon, it's Oir. In Vayelach Samach Vav he explains this. So now, one second. But to reconcile it, there is a level that once the Oir comes and extends itself, then it's called God's desire. God's desire basically is one step below God's transmission, if you want to put it that way. Oir is the best example for God transmitting something. Ratzon is the next level of that. It's still an expression of the soul. It's still an expression of God's interests. But it's already defined by the word Ratzon.
It's not Ein Sof.
Etzem, it goes Etzem.
It has not Ein Sof of Or.
It's very definite, this but not that. And this,
it has an element of Ein Sof still. He still says Ein Sof. It's still Or. It's Pashtus Or. Still call it Ein Sof.
So you say it's Etzem, then Or, and then Ratzon.
No. You say here you say Etzem Or and Pashtus Or. That's Or and Ratzon. They're both Or.
Right.
Etzem Or is without a name. Pashtus Or, it's called Ratzon.
No name?
Why don't you go back and learn chapter 50?
Okay.
No. Which chapter is it? No. This is just a summary of what he said earlier. I'm just saying. Where did he say it? Chapter 57.
I remember that.
Yeah. Let's do the summary.
Kitzur of the Kitzur.
Kitzur of the Kitzur. This chapter is very valuable.
It's like the Cliff Notes. Please put it up.
Would you be able to learn this without it before?
I have no idea if I learned it now. So if you could put it up on the internet as soon as possible.
So you're the guy. You're the ultimate paradox. You get as excited as you get. You always say you don't know what you got. So you have like Metzias and not Metzias here. I'm excited, but then I don't know if I got it. No, I tell you, you're excited because it's true. It's Kitzur, the Kitzur of the Kitzur, right? So look how he starts the Kitzur. Teichen Inyan, the summary of the Inyan. He says that the summary. Teichen, what say the content. Teichen Inyan, the Yesher She'Ha'iris. It's almost like the Rebbe Rashab was like summing up for everybody who was not around, or even if you were. New Year, let's sum up. That's what I'm saying. It's clear that he's like giving you like. It goes to show you that he's not a makiv kloli, the Rebbe Rashab. He understood where the people were, so he got down a little and said, "Let's explain it a bit." This is just a little lull before the next wave. Not a lull. I mean, this alone really sums it up, and it's very. So Teichen Inyan, the Teichen of the Inyan is the Yeshar She'er is the Eir Pnimi. There's the root of the energies, the immanent energies, Be'erin Sof Shalifnei HaTzimtzum, in the infinite light before the Tzimtzum. V'hu Mash Erin Sof Shir Ba'atzmi L'Hoyer B'Midah V'Gvul. And that's where the infinite light, envisioned or allocated or estimated within himself to radiate, to transmit with the measure and parameters. V'hein esses spheres agnuzas. These are the 10 hidden spheres. V'sham hein b'bchinas eres achdus mamish. And there they're completely united, in a form of complete unity. By the tzimtzum nimshach spheres pratis ba'akav b'bchinas nekudis. And through the tzimtzum is transmitted individual spheres in the kav in the form of points. Shem gam ken b'chinas pshitas. They're also shapeless. U'ba'kelim b'chinas mitzias. And in the container they become substantial. And they have hierarchy, higher and lower gradations in the Mailoson, in their quality, and their level. So even the Mailoson, in other words, Maila is the level of energy, and the Regosan is their actual distinct levels.
Quality and quantity.
In a way. It's almost like form and function. Yeah, quality and quantity, almost like, yeah. And the Er Makiv in its root is the revelation, the expression of the essence, literal Ein Sof. Nevertheless, there are general transcenders and specific ones. The general ones is the higher purity before the tzimtzum, and the lower one purity after the tzimtzum, the primordial thought after the tzimtzum. And the specific makifim are the crowns of each world, the desires of each world. And all makifim affect below. The next chapter he's going to begin now how Kesed de Bria affects Bria, differently than Kesed Atzilus affects Atzilus. So that's the summary of the summary. I want to just qualify one thing which is bothering me, and maybe I don't know if it's bothering you, but it's definitely bothering me, and I've already referred to it earlier. There's one thing that I keep looking for a hint that he's going to tie the knot, and it hasn't done it yet, at least, the Rebbe Rashab. And that's, initially when we spoke about Esses Spheres Agnuzas, the whole discussion was how it's immanent energy, the root of immanent energy. Then when he goes over to Makif, he suddenly speaks about that same level, but now completely Makif. And like Pnimi is almost like a different... And even when you read this chapter, Esses Spheres Agnuzas is the root of Makif or Pnimi. So he says clearly it's the root of Pnimi. 100%. He says that specifically. But then he says that the Igel HaGodel is the Tahiri Allah and all the Or Makif, rooted in Or Makif. For you there's no stira. Okay. No. When you read this, it seems like it's which one is it?
Both come from there.
Well, what does that mean? 1 second, hold on a second. We're talking Lifnei at Tzimtzum. So Esses Spheres Agnuzas is Or Makif or Pnimi in your mind? Both?
It has both elements, sure. Both.
Does he say that?
He said one, then he said the other, so they were both.
No, where does he say? He says specifically Esses Spheres Agnuzas is the source of
in the Or
Pnimi.
No, you're correct in what you're saying. That's my conclusion, is that there's a key line earlier that he said several times, that the Esses Spheres Agnuzas are rooted in the Or Makif that are higher than the Esses Spheres Agnuzas. I think that's the key thing, but he doesn't spell it out. That's what bothered me, because usually with this type of precision you'd spell such a thing out. And he does say it earlier. I was waiting that he should say it here, because we don't have to leave it for guessing. My assumption is the following: that how does it work Lifnei at Tzimtzum? So now we have like this: we have the root of Pnimi in the 10 hidden spheres. We have the root of Makif in the that's higher than the 10 hidden spheres. That's
the wanting of it and the being of it.
1 second before right. Before Tahiri Allah, it's important. 1 second. So that he said very much earlier. Now the Esses Spheres Agnuzas, which are the root of the Pnimi, they emerge in the Bligvul of the Makif. That's the root of the Makif. He doesn't say that here, but he says it earlier.
Say that last part.
the root of the Ur Pnimi in the 10 hidden spheres originates in the root of the Ur Makif higher than the 10 hidden spheres. The 10 hidden spheres are just a so-called an aspect of the Ur HaBligvul that's higher than they are.
So like the stairs are coming down.
Yeah, like the infinite possibilities of the artist, he chooses one possibility called 10 spheres. Right. So he doesn't say that right here, but he said it earlier. That's why I'm just tying it up. So therefore, what happens now is the following. What happens now is the following, what you just said. Then when the Tzimtzum comes, the Esher Spheres Hagnuzis turn into an Igul Hagadol. They become now a Makif. They're essentially now a root of Makif. Even though there's an element in them that's a root of Pnimi. But the Igul Hagadol is really like the root of the 10 hidden spheres, and they are the ones that create transcendence.
I thought we said that the Igul Hagadol comes from the or the Igul that had the Tzimtzum, and that by the essence of the Gnusis, that it only had reduction in or. In other words, that the essence of the Gnusis are completely incompatible, submerged in the or that's within the Tzimtzum. And that's the source of the Igul Hagadol.
He spoke earlier that there were the two symptoms. One is the Bligvul gets concealed completely, and the Esser spheres Hagnuzis don't get concealed completely. It's only Gilead Helen because they do have 10 spheres in them. He spoke about that. So what are you saying?
So in other words, it's not that it's that.
So which one's the Igul Hagadol?
Is the or there was that one is put on the side. That's where the mamish.
So which one is that?
That's from the or. Where was the true Tzimtzum? In the unlimited or. So that's what he
Or himself.
The problem is, I think that he said that Igul Hagadol is the 10 hidden spheres. That
I think he also said it, but I think it's more that started out.
No. I'm fine with that. That's fine. I'm just trying to spell out some things that he doesn't say specifically here. It's correct what you're saying. In other words, like this. To add more to the equation, it goes like this: the Kav is the Esser sphere Sagnuzis after the Tzimtzum. That's why it's Gilead Helam. Because the Kav is getting its spheres from the Esser sphere Sagnuzis. So, however, it couldn't have gotten it before because before it was completely Pshittis. The Igul Hagadol is what left over the Makif, the Ur HaBligvul that created the 10 hidden, that from where emerged 10 hidden spheres, that remains completely concealed. And that's the root of all the Makifim later. That's the Hiri law. But there's a place where the two meet. That's the thing. You see, at the end of the day, the 10 hidden spheres do meet their makif, because they originate there. So even though it's correct to say, I think therefore that's why you could say the Igul Hagadol has an element of 10 hidden spheres in them and has an element of the makif in them. He doesn't spell it out.
Hiri law in it?
Yeah.
We said at one point that the essence here is Gnusis, completely transcendent, not even the shorish.
Yeah, but then correct. But then he also says that there's a Gilead Helam of it in the Kav.
After the symptom.
Okay, fine. I want to look up and see whether he actually says earlier that the Igul Hagadol has 10 hidden spheres in it. Is that the 10 hidden spheres, or is it the Makif that created the 10 hidden spheres? That's the real question on the table. Okay. We'll stop here. I'm going to look that up. I'll let you guys know. Okay, so we did the beginning of Discourse 18, page 127, 128, chapter 68.